Hey everybody, this month's episode of the Rahdo Talks Super podcast is brought to you by the Paradox Initiative, which I just wanted to let everybody know is available for pre-order/late pledge. You can find a link for it down in the show notes or go directly to paradox.rahdo.com in case you missed out when it was crowdfunding and I covered it in prototype form. And once again, folks, I just gotta say, Jen and I really enjoyed this wonderfully puzzly game. It has kind of a bejeweled vibe with a lot of really nice set collection in a cool sci-fi setting. And what I didn't know at the time, I was just finding out, they actually have a higher level pledge that actually gives you not only the game and all the deluxe components, but 4 unique player mats that are all based on the art that comes with the game. And you get to choose, hey, do I want the Vincent Dutray art and the Miko art, or I want the Andrew Bosley art? It's very, very cool. If you're looking for a higher level pledge and you really love absolutely gobsmackingly gorgeous player mats. But anyway, the game as a whole is wonderfully fun. It's beautiful, and you can pre-order it again at paradox.rahdo.com. And thanks to Elf Creek Games for supporting the show. And now, hey everybody, how are you doing? I am doing okay. We've got a very big show for you today. You folks really delivered on the questions. But as always, folks, my tank is empty. I need more questions. Email them to questions@rahdo.com so we'll be able to do this again in another month. But for now, you know how it works, folks. First, I'm going to do some gaming-related stuff along with channel stuff. Jen will join me for a little bit more gaming Q&A, and then we'll spend the second half of the show going deep on personal topics. And once again, talking a lot more about sports as it happens. Folks, I think I've had enough questions about sports. Although I don't want to censor anybody, go ahead and send your questions to questions@rahdo.com, especially if this episode spurs any questions in you. But without any further ado, folks, let's get going right after this. Okay, everybody, here we go. Game and questions and answer time, starting with Ben G. These are in alphabetical order. Ben asks, hey, having played everything to date, if you had to whittle your collection of Aeon's End content down to 1 or 2 boxes / standalone expansions, say for an extended RV trip, which would you keep? Honestly, that's a super easy question to answer. It would have to be, the second Legacy, Legacy of Gravehold. I mean, that one game feels like it's 30% of all Aeon's End content of all time is in that one box. I don't think it's quite that much, but it was just so amazingly over top. So much stuff in there. Plus, it's a legacy game, although, you can continue playing it once all that's done. And I love playing games with stuff that I've customized and all that. So, yeah. That's a total no-brainer. Aeon's End, was it? Legacy of Gravehold. Easy peasy. Okay. Then we move on to them. I wonder if they're all going to be this quick. I doubt it. Daniel, let's see if you slow me down. Co-op games luck follow-up. While Gloomhaven and Pandemic do have that horrible luck I was talking about. Okay, so this is from last, I guess, I remember vaguely Daniel asked about, hey, why are co-op games crappy or something? I don't remember the specifics, but okay, it must have been about luck, that co-op games were too lucky. And I probably said, I don't know if that's true, or probably. But anyway, obviously Daniel wrote this right after he watched me. It's a month later for me, but Daniel, we'll figure it out as we go. Right. While Gloomhaven and Pandemic do have the horrible luck I was talking about, in Gloomhaven, if you don't have Eagle Eye goggles, you can miss 2 times in a row with a single target attack, or you can set up to attack and kill an imp only for it to shield 5, if I remember correctly. Both of these things can basically make you waste a turn. Oh, so Daniel must have been saying, hey, what's with the preponderance of skip your next turn moves in co-op games? And here's the deal. I wouldn't say this is exactly... Actually, that's not true. That's not true. You're right. Gloomhaven, you can put into the deck there's the 2x, which is like a super explosive multiplier that is nice. But then to offset, there's also it doesn't matter what your plans were, you miss this turn. Now, of course, your entire turn wasn't skipped, because that's only one of the 2 things you did that turn, Daniel. You were still doing other stuff. Plus, you have items on top of that you can activate independent of whether you take a swing and a miss. So I'm not going to agree that was an entire turn skipped because you rolled Snake Eyes. Although, here's the interesting thing. Don't forget, Gloomhaven makes it very clear. Hey, you know what? If you don't like that extreme swinginess, it's perfectly reasonable to just take if you take out the you'll always miss no matter what, and the hey, sometimes, or the no matter what you'll miss card, and the hey, you got a double X combat swing. You can just simply remove both of those from the deck, and then it won't happen at all. And that's not like a home rule. That's an official rule if you want. So, one, I disagree that it makes you skip your entire turn because you still had your other card, you still have your items. Plus, don't forget, that shield 5 that they drew, that means you have taken that out of their deck. That's probably the biggest thing. The biggest thing you have to be afraid of in that deck is the fact that they can completely invalidate any move you make, and now you know your next turn is going to be stronger because that thing can't come back up. Unless it's one, I guess, that reshuffles their deck. But, so I disagree with these ones. I do not believe these are the Gloomhaven equivalent of, wow, I drew that card and wasted my entire turn. Literally, I achieved nothing on this turn. I disagree. But even if you still feel that way, the games say, well, just take it out. Alrighty. Pandemic, you can also get into a death spiral if you're unlucky when you reshuffle the deck after you draw a pandemic card. See, if you get into a death spiral after you reshuffle the deck, I'm going to say that is because you were not paying attention to the draw pile, and you had to make sure that, okay, there's a likelihood we're going to have to start reshuffling pretty soon. What is a death spiral? Oh no, the only way a death spiral can happen is if you've created the circumstances on the board for it to happen. That you have got too many, 3 cube cities adjacent to each other that could then, because, hey, in a turn or two, we're going to have to reset the deck. And oh my god, those 2 spaces and those 2 spaces, if we reroll decks in the next couple of turns and we haven't cleaned that stuff up, we could go into a death spiral and lose. I think you'll see the common refrain here, Daniel, is you allowed all of that to happen. That's the skill of the game. More than anything else is paying attention to the state of the decks. Not only the draw deck to know, all right, how many more turns are we likely to get before we have to reshuffle the deck, but also what cards are going to get reshuffled into the deck. When we shuffle this up and put it back on top, what are the likelihood of that we're going to get X plus Y plus Z? So I think that's still a case where it's not that the game was designed to say, hey, you know what, every once in a while you just skip a turn. It's that the game was designed to allow you to let the situation fester such that really calamitous things can happen. But anyway, these are not intended as part of the design, only unfortunate side effects. I would disagree with both of those statements. But what I actually meant in my original email was when designers deliberately insert luck. For example, Daniel continues, Aeon's End, hey, it's a callback to the last question, has reshuffled deck effects which ruin all your previous planning and deck setup, and the possibility of the Nemesis going 4 times in a row without you being able to react. Yeah, sure, but then that means you will get to be able to take several turns in a row without the Nemesis reacting. That all balances out. That's not you losing a turn. Losing a turn would be the Nemesis saying, hey, burn that card in the player's deck. Now, to be fair, I'm not certain that doesn't exist somewhere in all the Aeon's End content. Was there ever a boss that said, literally destroy one of the player's turn cards in the turn order deck? I don't recall seeing it, but if that existed, I would say that's an example of it. But what you're describing is just part of the nature. Oh, if the boss got several turns in a row, that means we get several turns in a row. And to me, that's very cool. It means, okay, wow, we're taking a beating now, but we're really going to be able to make a comeback. You're not being cheated of anything. It's just a variable turn order. The reshuffling your deck, that's what all deck builders do. Just because, it's not that you've, again, the equivalent of, wow, the boss just triggered this effect that made me lose an entire turn or made me throw my entire deck away. Yes, it's certainly true that, I was trying to control my deck so these cards would come out in this order, and now that I have to reshuffle, maybe I won't quite get the combos I need to do. But that's a very different thing. That is what I think good co-ops do, is create problems for you to solve. If everything just went lickety-split, smooth as silk, hey, hey, everything just works out the way I want it to work out, and the co-op game didn't throw some kind of confounding factors at you, it wouldn't be very fun at all. And I think confounding factors that create problems you have to overcome is different than you just lost a turn, which I don't think is what these situations are. Shadowrun has crossfire cards that can nullify your upgrades. If I remember correctly, I had my hand size downgraded to 2 on the first turn, and my character had an upgraded hand size of 5. Yeah, so resolve that problem. Again, this is not the same thing. And really, the reason all these things exist in cooperative games is because fundamentally, this is trying to use a simple system that is easy to maintain to replicate a competitive game where, sometimes your opponents end up taking things that you were desperate for. And, and sometimes they do it because they know you were desperate for it. And, depending on who you're playing with, I try not to play games that allow me to do that, but, it can happen. And a dumb deck of cards can't strike with surgical precision the way a human player does. So instead, they try to replicate that feel of, oh my gosh, my plans! And, I got to come up with a new plan now. And honestly, if a co-op game doesn't make you come up with new plans because it comes up, it has ways to interfere with your existing ones, it's not a very good co-op game. But none of this is the equivalent of, just because of bad luck, I lost. Or just because of bad luck, I lose a turn, which I think was what your original email was. Anyway, Spirit Island has events that came in the expansion but were designed to be part of the base game that can make you discard all of your slow powers that you've played. Some of them can lead to outright losing or winning. That one I couldn't say because I have not played the expansion. And I guess if you don't like those events, take them out of the deck. At the end of the day, I would not look at that. I haven't played those, but I've heard people say similar things about Shadowrun Crossfire, that, there are just some events in the card that just make you insta-lose. And I expect that's maybe how you feel this Spirit Island event does as well. Haven't played them, but here's the thing. This is why I always say to people who say, Shadowrun Crossfire is entirely unfair. One single card drawn at the wrong time can just cause you to go from doing okay to losing. And my response to that is, if you're in a situation where that can happen to you, you were not doing okay in the first place. You had made poor decisions many turns earlier, rounds earlier, and you didn't realize at the time that they were potentially putting you in a situation 3 or 4 rounds down the row where you could just insta-lose because of a certain type of card. The reality is that you should be able to, I'm not saying this is easy, but what you need to do in that circumstance is right. In Spirit Island, again, I'm assuming, have not played the expansion, but don't remember anything like that in the original game, but I haven't played it for years either. That, if that kind of a thing makes you instantly lose the game, that's not when you lost the game. You lost the game several turns ago when your situation had gotten to the point where, oh my gosh, if there is one turn in the future where I can't play my slow cards, I'm guaranteed to lose. That's the moment you lost the game, when you put yourself in that situation, not when the situation occurred, in my opinion. Anyway, then continuing on, this War of Mine, if I remember correctly, there is Chaotic Luck, the game. I'm saying there's maybe a card that's Chaotic Luck. Anyway, to sum up, well-designed games which have 1 or 2 instances of utter chaos deliberately inserted by the designers. Okay. Well, first of all, let me apologize if your point was not that, hey, it's kind of crap that there's just skip your turns. I gravitated to that because, again, it was a month ago I read your last email and you led with skipping the turn. Again, it's chaotic luck. Maybe I'll grant you, it's chaotic luck the first time you play the game. Or maybe the second time you play the game if you didn't see that event. I think skillful mastery of a cooperative game requires looking through the deck of events before you shuffle it out and put it on the board and understanding what kinds of things can happen. Because if you do, they're not chaotic. They're only chaotic because you put yourself in a situation where they can completely rickroll you. If you know that you are playing with those particular events in the Spirit Island deck, you have to remember at all times, every turn, and more importantly, every future turn beyond what you're doing right now, that there's a chance that you won't get to play your slow cards. And you need to be thinking now, what will that do to me in the future if that happens? And when you start doing that, that's when you start playing, given a cooperative game at hard difficulty levels and still find you win most of the time, like the designers of the game do. Jen and I, we have almost never lost at Gloomhaven because we are constantly counting cards. We are constantly figuring out what is the likelihood that whiff could happen. What is the likelihood that armored skeletons 5 defense could happen. When we play Pandemic, we are counting cards. Right, how many cards have we drawn since the last time we had another Epidemic card come out? When we don't just put all of the played city card or infection cards into the discard pile, we splay them out. So at a glance, we can see all the cities that are likely to be hit the moment that an Epidemic card comes out. So we're always, you know what? It's been a while. In the next two or three turns, we're going to get hit again. And Chicago and Washington, D.C., there's a chance they are both going to come up at the same time. That is our number one priority. Forget about finding the cure to this particular cure that we're so close, or doing whatever else we want to do, or using a special power. That's the thing that will kill us maybe in 3 turns. We need to prepare for that now. And if you're doing that, then you are not at the whims of what seems like chaos. You can control the chaos, Daniel. That is my opinion. Alrighty, anyway, then we move on to Jack with the Jack attack. Number 1, Jack has bulleted his list. He has got 6 bullets, and they're long and texty, but here we go. Number 1. Your discussion about Agricola's card play and drafting in the last 2 podcasts reminds me of your corner-to-corner videos with Tom. I miss those a lot, as discussions about mechanisms in the games that embody them is very interesting to me. In that spirit, one of my favorite mechanisms is the Mancala. What do you think this mechanism provides to games that makes it special? For reference, here's a list of games with the Mancala. Very handy, Jack, that you give me those clickable lists. I will click on that link. Boop. All right, I have to I have to click over here, and then a control click, and then it opens up, and then we go to the browser, and the browser thinks about it for a bit, and here we go. Okay, and I'm going to go one step further and sort by popularity, because I'm sure there's a bunch of games I've never heard of. All right, so what makes the Mancala mechanism implicitly engaging, implicitly stand out, and add to the overall experience? Well, I mean, to me, Mancalas are, a traditional Mancala, and I say that because the first, number 1 on the list is 5 Tribes, which is a very non-traditional. Actually, no, wait, that's not true. 5 Tribes is the traditional Mancala where you're free to move around whatever you want. It's just that Trajan, which brought back Mancalas from obscurity, not that Finca didn't exist before Trajan, but Trajan really made people, oh my God, what is this mechanism? I've never seen anything quite like it. All these little cups, and you go around and all that. And then people said, yeah, that's been with us since ancient Egypt. People have been playing this game. And you're like, oh, how exciting. But anyway, so really the question could say, why has humanity been playing Mancalas since literally the time of the ancient Egyptians? Or I'm not sure if that's true. I remember it's definitely the case of the Romans, but I think there's like evidence that maybe even the ancient Egyptians were playing it, way BCE, which is very, very cool. I think they are interesting and engaging, especially in modern board game design, because a Mancala is a perfect information situation. Unlike Daniel's question about, hey, what's with all these cooperative games and all their random stuff? And you see a lot of random stuff that happens in competitive games as well, whether it's rolling dice to see if you succeed at what you want to do, or events that change the state of the game at the beginning or end of a round, or who knows what all it might be. Modern board games, even Settlers of Catan, have a healthy dollop of luck. And Mancalas say, screw you, luck. Everything you need to know is right there on the table. You're the one picking, and they are a really interesting and rich compound decision. Which cup am I going to draw from? What order am I going to distribute the seeds? Because that's what they originally were, back in ancient times, and even still in modern day. When Jen and I, went to Africa and did safaris and whatnot, and we went to villages, we actually found, literally dug up holes in the ground where local kids would play Mancala. Mancala and whatnot. Because, hey, you just dig some holes in the ground, you throw some seeds or some pebbles or whatever, and you can play Mancala. It's amazing. It's kind of like football or soccer in board game form because, anybody can play it anywhere. It's the great equalizer. But more importantly, it's a 3-step process. Where am I picking up? Where am I dropping things off? And where am I getting to at the end? What thing am I triggering? And that is a much more interesting and engaging, multifaceted decision than just I am going to put my worker in that space, right? When a worker placement game like, say, Brussels 1893 says, me placing this worker here, not only am I doing the action of the space, but I'm making a bid on an auction, and I'm also engaging in an area control game, and that worker affected 3 different subgames. That's kind of the bread and butter of Mancala, which is one of the things that makes it awesome. Because not only are you're figuring out what do I want to do right now, but you're setting yourself up for the future by getting other things in different spots. And I think probably that's what makes Mancalas really special. Although, man, there aren't very many of them, are there? Wow. Because, we're already, what is this? This is a list of 100 games. And after about 30, I'm getting into stuff I've never heard of. That's really, I would not have expected that. But anyway, I think that's what makes Mancalas stand out for me and makes them really particularly meaningful and above and beyond. Speaking of Mancalas, I have noticed, continues Jack, you only have 2 left, Trajan and Gold West. You seem to like this mechanism a lot, so what gives? Is just relatively few games utilizing this? I'm going to assume so. All right, let's go back to that list. The master list. Browser. Okay. So, 5 tribes, I thought was very, very good. Putting aside the slavery card issue, but I got rid of that one because I had a real problem with how they did 2-player scaling. If they had done a better job of that, I think it would have been a keeper once the faker cards came out and replaced the slavery cards. Trajan, of course, we have kept. The Great Zimbabwe. Oh, I did have that. Why don't I have it anymore? Let me see what I said. All right. If you go to gone.raw.com, you can look this up, or you can just look I can look, because I can say, hey, previously owned, and then if I were to edit it, I would say, my favorite Splatter game by far. Still doesn't entice me as much as more standard Eurofare for our tastes. Wow, I wrote that like 50 billion years ago. These days, I try to be a little bit more, add some more specificity. So I cannot say, because, geez, I have not played Zimbabwe for a decade, I bet. Yeah, it came out in 2012. So yeah, over a decade. There must have been a reason I got rid of it, but I could not say what it is, and apparently I couldn't say back then. I mean, I got rid of it back when I barely started doing Rahdo Runs Through, and I don't think I maybe had the language to articulate, why isn't this working for us? Crusaders Thy Will Be Done. Actually, I only recently got rid of that because that game is totally a keeper from a gameplay perspective. A user customizable Mancala is great. But, excuse me. But, the more I live with it, the less I find myself comfortable with the subject matter. Finca was a very neat little game, but it was kind of cutthroat, really kind of, you're trying to do all this and boom, I'll just rip it out from underneath you. Tack, I don't know. Gold West is fantastic and interesting. I wouldn't necessarily consider Gold West to even be a Mancala game. I can kind of see how it sort of is. I guess, yeah, you pick something on the elevator and you drop them off to different levels. Yeah, okay, it's a Mancala game, that's true. And it's just awesome. Theseus Dark Orbit, the next one on the list, is fantastic. I held on to this game for years because it is a Mancala game that is also an area dominance battle. So you might guess what the problem with it is for us. I mean, both Jen and I were super impressed by it, and I held on to it for years. But every year, I'm always looking for excuses to get rid of games. And these days, one of the easiest excuses is, you know what, a game that I know we loved in spite of the fact that it was a fairly aggressive in-your-face dogfight. Am I going to go back and play it when I have so many wonderful live and let live games surrounding me now? Probably not, so I got rid of it. But if you want brilliant Mancala gameplay, incredibly thematic atmosphere, this is basically James Cameron's Aliens, the Mancala game, where one player is the aliens, the other player is the Marines or the scientists, or there was another faction as well, as I recall. Asymmetrical abilities and all of that, and an area control Mancala game. It's frickin' brilliant. But again, too hardcore. Fistful of Meeples was a nice, sweet, little, simple, kind of like almost gateway Mancala. I think I got rid of it because it was so light. And that was the year that, what is that designer's name? Not Kane Klenko. Why am I thinking Kane Klenko? I'm going to be so embarrassed when I look up the name and remember that it was Johnny Pack. Of course, Johnny Pack had this really awesome triple hit of Coloma and this and Sierra West. And ultimately, I'm like, okay, do I really need 3 Johnny Pack games this year? And I said, no, I'll get rid of the lightweight gateway one. Talong, I don't know. Longhorn, I've never played. Emerald, I've never played. Robber Knights, Deja Vu, Fragments. Oh, Deja Vu. I played a prototype of that. I thought it was actually pretty good. If they might have sent me a final version of it, that might have been a keeper for me. Ostia. Now, this one I am very excited about. If there is anybody who knows somebody at publisher, who is the publisher of Ostia? Uchibakoya. Uchibakoa is a board game store and publisher from Japan. If anybody has contact with them, because I sure as heck don't, I would love to pick up a review copy of Ostia. I remember when it was on Kickstarter, I actually made it top 10 must-have Kickstarters because it looked so frickin' good. I just obviously don't know anybody at the publisher. Then there's some more abstract, older ones. Pilgrim is totally a keeper. Pilgrim is like a really awesome free-form Mancala game. I only played the prototype. If they had sent me a final retail copy, I would have kept that one. Planes was nice. I liked it. I just didn't love it. But I definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was very nice, Mancala with, constantly changing goals for what you're trying to do. What did I say? What did I say when I got rid of Planes? Let's see if I've gotten any better over 8 to 10 years of putting in comments as to why I would get rid of a game. Really like this, but then we got Automobiles from the same designer publisher and realized we'd rather play that one 9 times out of 10. Well, that's kind of silly because Automobiles is a bag building race game. But I do remember at the time that publisher AEG was making such a big deal. Look, it's our Planes, Trains, and Automobiles series. Because it first came out Trains and then Planes and then Automobiles. I don't honestly think that makes much sense with the benefit of hindsight, and yeah, that was probably a mistake. Planes was probably worth keeping. Bethel Woods I've played. This is very, very cool because it is a cooperative, a cooperative Mancala game where we're taking turns moving the Mancala and whatnot, and that was actually really neat. Why did I say I got rid of that? All right, I don't remember now. I've got like, 2,000 games I've gotten rid of. I can't remember all of them. Only got rid of it because of International Move. Yeah, okay, so that's one I would have kept. But the reality is, when we moved from Malta to the USA, tough choices had to be made in Bethel Woods because it was incredibly expensive to move overseas. So we were trying to cut costs down, and so Bethel Woods didn't make it for that reason. And then we're getting into stuff I've never heard of. I believe we did play Humboldt's Great Voyage, and that was nice, but it was really light. Fruit Picking was really cool. Fruit Picking is actually a great Mancala as gateway game. But again, super duper lightweight. And then, we're beyond. We're just into total abstracts that I've never heard of. Deadpan, Catch 19, Bosch. So yeah. To your original question, Jack, there just aren't very many. And I've played most of them, or at least played most of the modern designer versions of them. Alrighty. So yeah, developers, there's a lot of stuff that is still yet to be done with Mancalas. And there's a reason Mancalas have been with us for over 2,000 years as a species. For upwards of three millennia, we've been playing Mancalas. Do more stuff with Mancalas, modern game designers. Anyway, continuing on. Number 3, says Jack. Have you heard of Thorgal from Portal Games? Yes, I have. And then you do the pitch. Vikings cooperating to tackle adventures. You multi-use polyomino tiles to explore, defeat enemies. Robinson Rukoma. I looked at this quite a bit. Question, I assume they haven't sent you a copy to preview, and you probably won't cover it. But could you take a quick look at the campaign and give it a first live impression? No obligation to, though, of course. Jack, I'll tell you right now, I thought the game looked freaking fantastic. I was super excited about it. So much so that I am not going to put my email, I'm not putting the email on screen for people who are watching. Let me go on ahead and find it. I'm doing a search in my sent email for Thorgal. Because, as I recall, well, that's Portal Games, right? Yes, it is Portal Games. Portal Games contacted me in March 1st, and said, "Hey, would you be interested in covering this when it goes crowdfunding?" And I took a quick look at it, and I think we said, "Hey, can we get the rules and stuff like that?" And never heard back. But then, is this out of order? Oh yeah, no, that was in March of 2022 that happened, very early on. But then I guess they must have delayed. That's why they never got back to me. But then Ignacy himself emailed me in the middle of February and said, "Hey, we're getting ready for Thorgal," and he sent me the link to the rules because at that point they had stuff written up. And we'll have prototypes. We need the video by the end of March. Yes, and that was the problem. I so desperately wanted to play this game. You are right, Jack. For anybody listening, is Thorgal still on right now? Is it closed? Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Boop. Do. Is it still crowdfunding? No. You can still late pledge for it, it looks like. Oops, that was the wrong button. It looks like it raised over $250,000, which is good. I'm sure they were hoping for better. And I remember thinking, let's see, where did I remember I wrote something specifically back to Ignacy. When I did, right, where is it? To Ignacy. I said, "Hey, Ignacy, I love the combat concept for this. Kind of like a supercharged version of the grid thing from Sleeping Gods. But while that went on a bit long, this is fast and dynamic." So you can see, I was stoked, Jack. And for anybody who's still interested, you can still go back this. But then I continued in my original email. The problem is I'm about to leave for a 2-month road trip, and I'm not sure what your launch date is. Let's see if we can figure out scheduling. And then, I went to my channel manager, friend of mine who handles all the scheduling and stuff like that. And then I never heard anything back, which I can only assume means that bad timing. While Jen and I were on the road, they weren't going to be able to get a copy to us on the road, and I didn't get a chance to cover it. And I am bummed because I was super duper stoked for this game, Jack. It looked freaking fantastic. Like, best of class kind of, cooperative adventure. I loved the way the combat worked. And according to you, there's a bunch of other cool stuff too. So yeah, Thorgal looks fantastic. You can still late pledge and back it right now. Folks, it's on GameFound if you're curious to check it out. And I hope somewhere down the road, Portal gets on the phone and says, "Hey, we got the retail version coming out now. Are you on the road this time, or can you cover it now?" Because I'll be, yes, please. I'm really stoked for it. It looks great. Okay, then Jack continues with number 4. Thorgal looks to be in line with exploration games like Seventh Continent, Sleeping Gods, Unsettled, Tamashii, Forsaken, etc. Of course, I've only played Seventh Continent, but I can't help but be drawn to them, even though in reality I find it difficult to dedicate the game time and mental bandwidth for these sprawling experiences. I typically just rather play a self-contained, more mechanism-focused and less story-driven game. It almost seems like video games are a better medium for that type of experience. Sorry for the ramble, but would love your thoughts on these exploration and story-heavy games. Question: do you think exploration and story-driven board games or games are better a medium for video games? Would you rather play a game like these or a more self-contained mechanism-focused game? Any other thoughts? I certainly understand. Yeah, I mean, they don't have to require a commitment. You didn't include Gloomhaven. But I would include Gloomhaven in this, even if the exploration element of the game was kind of abstracted out, but it was still there. And but it was certainly a long, epic, story-driven game. Jen and I found a way to play that game for a year, even though it is not in my best interest running a channel to keep going back and playing a game over and over and over again that I've already done my coverage for. But we were able to do it because we just don't fall into the Netflix what is it called? Binge trap of, all right, okay, I've got the game. I've really got to spend a lot of time with it. We got to get the most out of it. And okay, let's play it, every night this week and try and get that. Don't do that. Play it once a month if you get one of these games. Lands of Galzir or whatever it might be. There's so many of them now. This war of mine. Just plan to get together with your friends or family, or whoever it is you play with, and say, okay, once a month, one of our game sessions is going to be another episode in our ongoing epic story, whether it's Thorgal or Forsaken or Sleeping Gods or whatever it might be. That's effectively what Jen and I did, and we kept playing Gloomhaven. Now, actually, we made it every week. And finish the thing, which is kind of unheard of for me. A game that's this big and long. So I think you can have your cake and eat it too. You just have to adjust your expectations. Kind of think of it more like back in the 80s when we would wait for 3 years between every episode of Star Wars, and that made Star Wars that much bigger of an event when it came around. Same thing here. If you're only going to play Thorgal 12 times a year, once every month, it's going to make every one of those sessions that much more special and stand out. And then the rest of the time, you play other games that aren't, story-driven. I think that makes perfect sense. And in that regard, I would say that is every bit as good as a video game. As far as I'm concerned, to your other question, I would say no. Board games are better suited for this. Primarily because you can share the experience with others. Whereas, big, epic, open world, story-driven exploration games are single-player affairs for the most part in video game format. I don't know if that's always true. But I think whenever they put in multiplayer, they're just like multiplayer deathmatchy type things or little co-op side missiony things, as opposed to, no. You and another player can sit down and play this game from start to finish. We did that for Fable 2. We put in a 2-player mode, but most people don't do it. Oh, man. Oh, the 2-player mode in Fable is so weird. But I'm happy with how it worked out. But anyway. I think you just have to adjust your expectation. I think we have literally been... I think the Netflix binging... breakthrough they had really is just bad news for pop culture, or just, culture as a whole, because it's engendered this, oh no, we must consume really quick and then move on to the next thing, like a plague of locusts, instead of savoring things like a fine wine. Savor Thorgal. Savor Seventh Continent. I think it'll make it that much better for you. Just like, way back in the day when, TV was appointment viewing. This actually is going to come up again later on. We get to the personal stuff, folks, because there's a question about sports and how, it's kind of the way to, it's destination viewing the same way that TV shows used to be, and still are to some extent. It's just the Netflix model is just crappy, just makes TV worse. And applying that attitude towards an epic game like Seventh Continent or Sleeping Gods or whatever makes it worse as well. Savor. All right, number 5. I've only watched a couple of your new rankening videos, but I do find them engaging. Thanks for another hit piece of media. Do you think doing these has a significant impact on your ranking, or was your old process actually good enough, and this just provides people a window into what you were doing anyway? That was kind of my original intent. And honestly, my expectation was it was mostly going to come out the same. But I did not appreciate how different it is to simply compare A to B. Because what I normally do is, and I'm still doing it when I find a new game we're going to keep, I figure out, well, this kind of feels like an 8.5. This kind of feels like a 7, a high 7. This feels like a high 8 or a low 7 or whatever. So I'll just, I type it in 7.8 and then I see where it shows up on the list with everything else. And then I just start moving up or down until I get to the point where, okay, well, this is not better than that. It's better than all these other ones. And that means I am comparing it not just against one game, but against a raft of games that really makes me think about it and evaluate different elements. Well, is it really better than this? There is that one thing that I really dig. And so it kind of goes through a trial by fire, either whether it moves up or down. In the rankening, where I'm just A-B comparison, no, it's this game versus this. And there's no greater context of, well, where will it sit on a list? I have surprised myself several times that I am valuing games differently. Because it is so ephemeral, without the full list and seeing where it is, it feels very ephemeral. I think that's what I was just about to say. And, it's like, well, just this. I think about, okay, if you're going to put 2 games on the table next to me, this one or this one, which would you play? And like, okay, that's a very different thing than, well, how does this rate against everything else you own? And so I think if I do make it to the end of the ranking process, it will be a very, very different, top 300 list than what I've currently done. And at that point, I'll have to decide, well, which one's truly more reflective of my thoughts, and maybe I'll change it around. So yeah, no, there have been a lot of surprises for me too. Okay, number 6, final one from Jack. You mentioned before, when you move back to England, Jen wants to reduce the collection to around 50 games. Did I say that? That sounds terrible. I don't want to have that happen. But I assume that's probably to keep international shipping costs low, right? Because it's crazy expensive to move overseas. The first time we did it, when we moved from Texas to England, I was working at Lionhead, and they paid for the moving, for the thousands and thousands of bucks it cost to do. When we moved back, nobody paid for it except for us, and so we got a lot more cost sensitive. So yeah, I could certainly see, although we'll have to have a conversation about that. 50 games. Right, so how in the world would you do that? Will you just take the top 50 ranked? Will you want to do a game for certain situation, scenario type analysis? Will other metrics like rarity, size, etc. matter at that point? Is it moot because you think you can convince Jen to up the limit? Smiley face, winky face. Thoughts from Jen on this process. Oh, shoot, this would have been a good one for thoughts from Jen. You know what? I just do a quick scan of every email that comes in just to see, okay, are these personal? Are these games? Is this something Jen could handle? And I think I only looked at the first couple of Jacks and said, okay, I'm just going to put all these. Probably none will be for Jen. This last one is a good one with Jen. I am going to save this one for next month. And we'll put it in the Jen column. Because I want to hear what Jen thinks too. Because apparently it was probably Jen's idea to do this terrible thing. Alrighty. But I will give you a sneak peek. One other potential analysis point, if we were to go through that process, is, am I going to keep filming games? Is Rahdo Run Through going to exist? I hope for Rahdo Runs Through to always exist. That's why I brought on so many people, that eventually I will be too old for this bleep, and I will stop, and hopefully others will be able to carry on the torch. But would a move back to England be something that is a precursor to that, and that might change things as well. But anyway, your question number 6 is going to be your question number 1 next month, Jack. It's a good one. Okay, then we're going to move on to Jeffrey, who says, I'm sure you've probably covered this in the past, but do you continue to discuss, rank, or recommend lesser-known titles from well-known designers? Those I can think of are Tuco Tacalia's Walnut Grove. That's an excellent. That would be the only Tuco Tacalia game I'd probably recommend, actually. Woo. Uwe Rosenberg's Mercator, Kramer and Kiesling, Vikings, Nautica, Sealand, Vlader Savada, Space Alert. Oh, yeah, that was nice, but as you say, probably not my jam. Actually, no, I thought Space Alert was fantastic, except for the fact that they did not care about two-player gaming at the time, obviously, because they couldn't be bothered to scale the game for 2 players. Anyway, Stefan Feld's Name of the Rose. Bit low for you, yeah. Reiner Knizia's Carcassonne the Castle. Matt Leacock's Roll Through the Ages Bronze Age. I see you go for bronze instead of copper. Matt Gertz, Navigador. Chad Jensen's Welcome to Centerville. Bruno Cathala's Titanic, Phantom of the Opera. Alexander Pfister. Just question mark, you said. So, those are some examples. Well, first, I rank every game, Jeff. If you go to rank.rahdo.com or games.rahdo.com or top.rahdo.com. Those are 3 different websites you can go to that will give you a ranking, a broken down ranking list of the 400 or so games in my collection, every single one of them ranked, whether it's old or new. But discussing and recommending them. Well, first of all, I am loath to make recommendations, quite frankly, because I'm terrible at it. Most of the time, if anybody ask for recommendations, my go-to is just always say, hey, you know what? Why don't you go ask on Board Game Geek in the recommendations forum, because the hive mind of Board Game Geek will do a better job than just what I might come with off the top of my head. But even if I were to, I think I'd be hesitant to go for these older ones because as a general rule, these are hard to get. So it doesn't make sense to say, hey, Walnut Grove, this is a phenomenal game that has been out of print for, over half a decade, and you'll have a very hard time getting it, and you'll probably have to get it shipped to you overseas. Recommended. That just doesn't make much sense to me. But, Walnut Grove, we're getting a 2.0 reprint, which it totally should because it's freaking phenomenal. Then, yeah, I would totally recommend it because I think it's great. But I think that's kind of where I would be hesitant to do it because I'm very sensitive to the fact that a lot of people, for better or for worse, use what I say and think about games as a very useful metric for whether they should pick games up or not. And so I'm sensitive to the fact. of that. Why should I rub a game in their nose that they literally are going to have a very difficult time getting their hands on and create FOMO? Or what's the past tense of FOMO? FOMO'd. They got FOMO'd. Because they did miss out. So no, I tend not to. One thing I've thought, somebody suggested a while ago, a very good top 10 topic, I thought, which is, what was it called? I can't remember now, but it was basically the idea that you take 10 designers, the big, Bruno Cathala and Uwe Rosenberg, and say, what is their best game that nobody's heard of, right? So for Uwe Rosenberg, I might go with Mercator, although I also might go with Bonanza the Duel. And Vlada Chvátil. What's an older, lesser known title of Vlad? I mean, actually, his game's all, but you know what I mean, right? I think that would be a pretty cool thing to do. But again, one of the things that's made me hesitate to do it is, all that would be doing is creating the ultimate top 10 FOMO list of games you can't pick up. So I tend not to focus on that stuff. I tend to focus on what can people go out and get right now. Anyway, the games are already expensive enough. They don't need to actually have on top of that the having to buy it secondhand and pay through the nose shipping for somebody in another country to send it to you. Anyway, Joshua says, if an alien species arrived at your home one night and wanted to play a game that best represented the board game hobby, what would it be? For context, this alien has been observing humans for at least 10 years, so it is familiar with much of our lives. Now, that's okay. What game? Let's go back to ranked.rahdo.com. I was just talking about that earlier. What game, for me, represents the hobby? I want to say a cooperative game, but you didn't say represents what the hobby can be, what it can represent. Because to me, cooperative board games are one of the most meaningful art forms there is in all of in any cultural artifact you can imagine. An experience that gets people to sit together at the same table and spend an hour or two looking at each other, talking to each other, engaging with each other, all engaged in striving towards a common goal. There is no greater message that can be pursued in our modern world, and really our world going back for 10,000 years, ever since we settled down and started farming, right? So co-op games to me are that. I poo-poo chess and backgammon and all the ways we've tried to find to dominate each other and defeat each other. I want us to work together. So my inclination would be to say, what represents the hobby? I would want to talk about a co-op game. I might talk about Pandemic, quite frankly, because it does everything I just talked about. It also has a strong underlying message that is relevant for our time. It also celebrates, members of our society that are our true heroes, much more so than sports legends and movie stars who we spend all of our time and adoration on. Why don't we give more love to first responders and, people who keep people alive and all that. So I'd love to say Pandemic, not the least which because it also got me into board gaming. But is it really represented? Because still, what is it? Maybe 20% of games that come out in a given year are cooperative? How can we test that? Let's go to Board Game Geek's advanced search, right? And let's go to the year 2021. Let's get a list of all games in the Board Game Geek data, added to the Board Game Geek database for the year 2021, skipping expansions. Of all of them, there are, so 48. So there were I believe there are 100 on each one of these pages, right? This is 100 games times 48. So really times 47. So let's say there were 4,700 games that came out in the year 2021. New games and all that. Now, let's put a twist on it, 4,700. And let's go to the mechanisms, or the mechanic, it calls it. Click on cooperation, which for the record is not a game mechanism. Whatever. But anyway, and submit that. So of the 4,700 games that came out, we have 7,000, less than 7,000 of... No, I'm sorry. Less than 700 of the 4,700 games are cooperative. So what is that? That's 7 divided by 47. That is just about 15% of all games in a given year are cooperative. And that is why, much to my chagrin, you can't really say the cooperative gaming is representative of the hobby. So I can't go with that. And that's really depressing. Like, hugely so. So, I gotta pick a competitive game. Because humanity still just likes to beat each other over the head with sticks. That is our default software mode, unfortunately. And more co-ops over time hopefully will reprogram our lizard brains and put that behind us. See, I just went to games.com. I want to go back to rank.com so I can see pictures. So I got to pick a competitive game that truly captures the hobby. And you know what that means? One game that captures the hobby, that means it has to be a very, what for a while people were calling hybrid games that are at once Euro and Ameritrashy, or I guess you could call them Eurotrashy if you wanted, which I don't mind. Right. So we have to do that because, we're trying to get the broad swath of, all the pomp and the drama of a Ameritrashy game, but also the thoughtful elegance of a Euro game. Okay, you know what I need to do? I just need to go back to advanced search again. That's going to be the easier way to do this, rather than me looking through my 400 games I have on hand. So, things that are owned by me that come under, right, and unfortunately there is not a hybrid thing in here. But I say I don't want mechanisms this time. I want categories. Is that right? Yes, I want. What are the tricks that they do? I think they call them thematic games, right? Am I wrong? Thematic. No. Okay. Oh, it's going to be down here. It's basically what Boardgame Geek classifies. Game subdomain. Yeah, I want games that are identified by Boardgame Geek both as strategic and thematic. Now, what I really should do is say, also that are party games as well, because, what am I going to get? Am I going to get any game that I own that is at once classified as strategic, thematic, and party? Probably not. No, I am not. Are there any games that I don't own that fall under that? Because if so, I'm curious to learn about that game. Let's go back to the subdomain and search for that again. Still, nothing. Now, here's the deal. If I take out the party, I'm just going to take out the party because that almost is kind of like a different... most people who are listening to this are probably hardcore board game geeks, are not looking for, bananagrams stuff. So let's go to just the strategy games that are also at once thematic games that I own, and then we end up with a short list, right? Gloomhaven, Dungeon Pets, Dragonfire, Dinosaur World, The Captain is Dead, Heroes Wanted, A Few and the Cursed, and Space Race, the card game. That is a weird and eclectic mix, I gotta say. I am gonna go back one step, because that did not give me results I was hoping for. I'm gonna get rid of the owned by me, but keep the rest, and submit. I'm sure I'll get a lot more stuff. Let's see here. Mage Knight? No, that's too heavy to consider. If it weren't co-op, I would 100,000% say Pandemic Legacy Season 1. But again, it's got to be competitive. So, okay, then that means what I have to do, I have one more box I have to tick, which kills me. All right, I have to go to mechanisms, and I have to negative the co-op, to leave co-ops off this generated list. And then Board Game Geek says... Twilight Imperium, Cosmic Encounter, or let's see, sort by what are the most loved. Because I think that's a reasonable thing too. Obsession. That's an interesting option. That's a very interesting option. Cosmic Encounter, Dungeon Pets. I'd love to say Dungeon Pets, but it's just too complicated. It is so far and beyond. That's really interesting. I don't think this is going to work. I'm not seeing anything that... it drives you nuts. I'm inclined to say Baseball Highlights 2045. I really kind of am. The only reason not to is because that's a 2-player only game. I don't think you can play Baseball Highlights at a higher player count, can you? If you could, if there was some version of that, I would probably put that on the list, quite frankly. I'd probably give it to that one. Let's see. That's interesting. Thunderstone. And, History of the World, Rex, Moonrakers, Thunderstone again. Yeah, this is kind of getting an older list, too, because I think the thematic thing, the definitions of thematic and strategic have kind of morphed over time, because originally when they were put in, they were just literally, we don't want people to call games Ameritrash anymore. Okay, well, let's call them thematic games. Oh, well, crap, now we have to call Euro games something, because we can't call them that. Let's call those strategic, which is, so once upon a time, everybody understood that's what it meant when you were clicking those. I don't think people understand that anymore. Wow. Looking through this list, you know what? Heroes Wanted makes a lot of sense to me. It really kind of does. It's got really a good humor. It's got so much variability. It is a competitive game, which we previously established is an important requirement for this. It is very thematic. It tells very fun stories, and the theme really drives the gameplay. But it's also surprisingly rich. But it's not too over the top. Anybody can learn to play it, and its fun factor is through the roof. I'm going to say Heroes Wanted. And it's not just because you can actually play as a hero patterned after Jen, taking down a villain patterned after me. Although you can do that if you get the expansions. Yeah, Heroes Wanted. I think that's the one for me. What a weird thought process that did not go where I expected it to at all. Thank you for that, Josh. Continuing on. Same as above, but instead the alien wants to play a game that best represents the human experience. Wow. Okay. 2 games immediately pop to mind depending on if I want to be bitter and cynical or not. Pursuit of Happiness is my go-to because it is a game that celebrates the best of it is a game about you as a player trying to live your best life. Right, and with all the expansions, it's thrown so much stuff in that you can get happiness by providing for the needs of another, or through greedy avarice. I mean, the game it just covers so much of the human experience. But like I said, if I wanted to be bitter, I could say, well, there's an alternative, and that would be This War of Mine, which in the same way digs down. It's at once 2 things. It digs down into, man's inhumanity to man while still shining a light on our incredible resilient spirit. So I would go with either of those 2 off the top of my head. Alrighty, number 3. In thinking of the age-old argument about what makes something a true work of art, what, in your opinion, makes a game a true masterpiece and not simply a board game? What would you use as metrics in evaluating the game? Well, for me, because this is something that came up all the time when I was in the video game industry. Are video games art, or are they just trifles? Can they be considered next to the greats of cinema or the greats of literature? And I always said yes, of course, because at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, this is my own personal definition, art is using a creative medium to express your thoughts about the human condition. At the end of the day, I think more than anything else, the human condition is maybe a little restrictive, but if not the human condition itself, things that affect the human condition, the state of the universe. Okay, I'll say, using a creative medium to express thoughts about life, the universe, and everything. That is art in a nutshell. I think the primary thing is it goes from just being a trifle, from being entertainment into art. If you are using the tools of the genre to express yourself and what you feel about the life in the Middle East, or global warming, or whatever it might be. So that is, to me, the definition of art. And yeah, there's lots of board games that do this. So, there's lots of board games that don't bother. And probably at this point, most board games don't bother. But I am always incredibly appreciative when a game actually does have something to say. And it's interesting, too. First thing that popped in my head was hegemony. Lead your faction to victory or something like that. Because, I mean, I don't know if I can, because the developers of that went out of their way to say, hey, you know what? We are not trying to put any editorial spin on this. We are just doing our best to replicate the reality. So is it art? No, I guess it's a simulation. Now, the reality is, when I played it, to me, it was pretty obvious. No, there's a bias here. I think there is. Or no, actually, that's not true. But I felt like biases were implicit to try and make the gameplay good, like the way migration is specifically. I remember that stood out to me. Well, okay, there's that's an editorial saying, putting migration in this, having this kind of an impact on the overall quality of the game, or the the impact of the simulation. But okay, I guess I'll still call that a simulation. So what do you got? You've got art, you've got entertainments, and you've got simulations, which are really kind of an offshoot of entertainment. And games that I think, I mean, hey, I just mentioned 2 works of art. I think Pursuit of Happiness is a work of art because, not only is it a mechanical exercise in min-maxing, resource gathering, and worker placement, efficiencies, and stuff like that, but it also has something to say about the human condition. And so does this War of Mine. I think this War of Mine wore it a little bit more on its sleeve, and it was probably more of a driving force, whereas, at the end of the day, Pursuit of Happiness, the developer of that, Dave Cherkoff, and everybody who's worked on it since then, said, well, hey, if I'm trying to identify and quantify what are things that deliver a well-lived life, that's them making an artistic statement about the relative merits of accumulation of wealth versus social ties. That's art. And I love art being brought into games. You don't see it that often. And often, and sometimes you see, I've seen games where like, wow, you really seems like you're saying this with the way that you've implemented this feature in this economic simulation. And I've seen the developers come out and say, oh, well, we didn't mean to do that. We were just trying to make a fun game. It's like, no, lean into it. Own it. And in my opinion, anyway. I mean, Golem isn't fresh in my mind because I can't imagine why Ruel put it in his top 10 disappointing games of 2021 when we did that the other day, but he did. But for me, that game is a work of art because, well, not for nothing, it is a recreation of an existing a work of art from the Talmud. Retelling the story, or from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, for that matter, the issues of man's creations, a man's hubris leading to the creation of something that they can't control, right? And that's a very strong modern day theme that we have to worry about, whether it is proliferation of nuclear weapons because of our mastery of the atom, or the breakdown in civic engagement because of our mastery of media being used as a tool to pull people apart. And what game was I just talking about? Oh, and Golem, to me, is a game that reckons with those things because it is a game where we are trying to create things to make our lives better, and we inevitably make our lives worse. And then we end up creating more problems for ourselves. I think that's great. So, I look for that kind of stuff whenever I can in games. Okay, number 4. What, in your opinion, are game designers and publishers not understanding about the hobby? What are you seeing designers and publishers, and by the same token, what are you seeing publishers and designers doing increasingly well? Well, obviously, rulebooks. Clearly, publishers and designers do not, well, some of them do, but many of them do not understand the basic precepts of how human beings learn. By doing just over and over and over again stupid and stupider things with their rulebooks. I'll put that aside. That's like a whole nother topic. Well, there's a lot of publishers that do not understand how important solo gaming is. It's coming on, but there's still a lot of publishers like, what? We have to put a solo mode in? All right, I guess I'll throw one in to tick the box, but what's the point of this? Does anybody even care? And I think that betrays a huge lack of the modern human experience, or lack of understanding about the modern human experience. In the same way that 10 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, publishers and designers really did not understand the value of two-player gaming. And they just kind of that's just something you do special. But no, gaming should be shared with 3 and 4 players. And like, why even bother making a 2-player rules for it? And you still see that some, but not very much these days, but you do see it for solo. So that's one thing that really jumps out at me. That's probably the biggest thing that jumps out at me at the moment, quite frankly. But it is changing. And on the flip side, what are designers and publishers doing increasingly well? Production quality. Quite frankly, that's we're getting better and better and better. The prettiest games of yesteryear, like when Alien Frontiers came out, and like, look at these little cities in little tiny bottles. This is amazing. That is now these days kind of like, well, yeah, that's okay. But, the art, or, the font, or, the graphics. I mean, we have gotten so spoiled because developers and publishers have really raised the bar. And nowadays, games that would have been, that was a nice looking game 10 years ago, are now dog crap. Like, no, they look fine. Just because they don't have Vincent Dutrait art doesn't mean that they're not bright and colorful and do their job. I'm thinking of the Queen City games. It's just amazing to me how spoiled, how much publishers are now spoiling players. So I would say that's something they're certainly doing increasingly well. Maybe to the detriment of the hobby overall, quite frankly. What are a couple of the most innovative twists that you've recently seen in standard Euro gameplay mechanisms? That's a good question. How am I going to find that? I am going to go behind the scenes, right? Yeah. I know what I need to do. I need to get this little triple arrow thing. And then I need to go to my Rahdo studio, and then I need to do a search for game videos I put that have the little arrows in it. And therefore, I will see all the games. I mean, this is just like, hey, everything I've run through. Because these days, starting about a year ago, I guess, I started naming all of my videos. More and more people are coming on the channel, and I want to be able to have a way to be able to find my videos really easy. I started saying, this is a Rahdo runs through arrow name, or Rahdo preview arrow. So I can easily find all the videos that I've got. And so now you're saying in Euro, all right, so we're going to ignore really thematic stuff like Last Spell. What is a very, very cool mechanism in recent Euros? Actually, you know what? Hold on a second. Before I do that, I'm out of water. I'll be right back. Okay, so let's see. Most recent, I just played Evolution Another World, and I would say that it really adds some new stuff to the Evolution formula, but it didn't like reinvent anything. So, Time Lancers, which I don't think my video, this is unlisted, hasn't gone up yet, but this is a little science fiction board traversal, collect resources, time travel game. It's very cool. And yeah, it's got a really neat thing. Quite frankly, most games, one of the reasons I often say no to games is because I read the rules ahead of time and say, well, that doesn't really sound like it's doing anything interesting or new. And I pass on them then. I had the chance to be one of the first videos up for Everdell. And I passed because I read the rules for Everdell. And I thought, wow, there is nothing special or unique here. Turns out I was wrong. Sometimes I get it wrong. But anyway, sorry, as an aside. Time Lancers is really cool because the board is a bunch of hexes, and on your turn you've got a little avatar who's going to move around from hex to hex to X. It's kind of like a worker placement game where your next worker placement spot is adjacent to where you were. And this has existed. I can think of one game where I played it before called Colonists years ago, where on my turn I get to move a little meeple around the board and activate every thing I step on, and the board itself is randomly generated. But what this game is really cool is the fact that because it's a time travel game and you can go back in the past and change events in history, what will happen is some of the tiles on the board will flip. And so you've got already a pretty largely unused action selection system where you create combos by moving a character around. I mean, there's been a few games that have done that, which is cool. But then the fact that it's changing dynamically because players go back in time and prevent the Magna Carta from being signed is one of the ones I can remember. And then all of a sudden that completely changes society. And so every society tile flips to the other side from when you go back in the future, and then it's a different board. I thought that was really cool. I wish it's unfortunate that really when those tiles flip, all they do is they kind of change the economy a little bit. Hey, this costs more, this costs less now. I could imagine a more ambitious design where they change radically, but I still thought it was very cool, just in Time Lancer. So that's one. And let's see. The Last Spell. Right. I just covered this. This was a very good tower defense game. I think it's probably... Well, no. what it did, I thought Myth did as well. So I won't go about that one. Amsterdam is just remaking Macau, so that's obviously been around for a while. Raising Robots is interesting, though. It's a San Juan-esque, or not San Juan, or San Juan, but also Race for the Galaxy-esque. Hey, there's a lot of games out there, ever since Puerto Rico, where the lead player picks a thing, and then everybody gets to do that thing, and everybody else is trying to figure out, right, how can I piggyback on what the player's going to do, because I'm going to do something else and all of that. That's been around for a while. Raising Robots takes that idea and really turns it on its head, because everybody's simultaneously, like Race for the Galaxy, choosing what they're going to do. And I can make educated guesses as to what bonus actions I'm going to get, because I can see, oh, look, you got 2 actions you might do. Those are the 2 actions you're going to potentially do because of the way cards came out. What you're going to decide is, you've got energy cards. How much energy you're going to put into those 2 actions. And I have to guess, are you going to put a lot of energy into that one? Because if you do, some of it will spill over to me, and that means I get to do that action. But if you don't do that, if you just go on the cheap, because that's all you need, so it's a different take that I thought was very, very cool on, the things that have been with us ever since Race for the Galaxy and whatnot. Let's see. And Oranienburger Canal from, right, what was that? No, I think that was a really solid game, but its worker placement is pretty straightforward. Nothing really very special there. And it is interesting that it's an engine building game where each one of the cogs of your engine you can only activate twice when you achieve certain things. Once when you surround a given engine element, i.e. a card you played, with certain types of resources, and the other when you've connected it to other ones. That was kind of cool, but I'm going to say that's a more low-key breakthrough. Motor City does a bunch of stuff we've seen before. Let's see. Pioneer Rails, I thought that was very, very cool, mixing route building with poker hand building, but we've seen that before. But it's still really nicely done in roll and write form. Tribes of the Wind had this very, very cool card idea where, okay, I've got these cards I want to play in my hand, but for me to be able to play them, what matters is not what resources I have, but what resources my neighbors have access to. And so and I thought that was a very cool idea that they really didn't do very much with, unfortunately. But I can imagine that idea taken and evolved into something bigger and cooler in the future. Most games, I could actually point out something. Point City was a brilliant, simple little tile drafting game where it's a grid of tiles, and I have to take 2 tiles, but I can't just take any 2 I want. They have to be adjacent to each other. And the tiles are all either resource generators or the things those resources are needed for to build. And I thought that was just freaking brilliant. So simple and so clean and so elegant, and just a really great twist on entwined drafting in a way that I had not seen done before. So I tend to think every game I cover, with very few exceptions, because I wouldn't choose to cover them if they didn't really do something new and interesting and different. Let's see, and then we're back to Jeffrey. Number 6, right? Yeah, I recently played Gloomhaven for the first time, and I found it to be too enormous. It would be a much better video game than a board game. My friend and I played 10 hours and only got through a couple scenarios. How, in your opinion, is it so high on BGG? It certainly cannot actually be the best board game ever made, in my opinion. Well, yeah, it being near the top, for the longest time it was the number 1 highest ranked game on BGG, and it's still in the top 5, I believe. But that doesn't make it the best game of all time. The Board Game Geek rankings are not a reflection of what is the best board game of all time. They are merely a reflection of what is the favorite game of denizens of Board Game Geek. So the reason it was number 1 for quite a while and is still in the top 5 is because it is a reflection of things that Board Game Geek, the website's fans, value. And they do value crunchy gameplay, complex systems that you are required to master. Huge value for money. A game that you buy it once and you can get hundreds of hours of gameplay out of it. It's one of the games I mentioned earlier. A mix of Euro-y style gameplay with Ameritrash style, drama and narrative and excitement. It hits all these buttons, and it does it in a way that makes it stand out from the crowd. So yeah, I think it achieves all that stuff. You say the enormity of it is not a bug, it's a feature. It's something that Board Game Geek denizens want to see. Heck, if we go back to Board Game Geek, right? One of these is in Boardgame Geek. Here we go. And how do you do it? You browse, you go to all board games, and then it takes a little bit, and up it comes. Brass Birmingham is an enormous game. Not as enormous as, Gloomhaven, but still huge. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 is an enormous game. Ark Nova is enormous. Twilight Imperium 4th Edition is enormous. Terraforming Mars, especially once you get all those expansions, is enormous. And I think those expansions help push it into the top 10. War of the Rings 2nd Edition, very definition of enormous. Are you seeing a pattern here? The reason it's at the top of that because Board Game Geeks value enormity above anything else. And it doesn't get much more. I mean, actually, that's not true. There are plenty of games that are more enormous than Gloomhaven. But Gloomhaven was in the right place at the right time to popularize the idea of almost obscene amount of content, which is certainly what it is. So, and other games have come along and done the same thing since, but Gloomhaven gets the, there's always the first inventor's benefit or whatever. I don't forget what it's called, but whoever does it first gets a huge leg up over everybody else. Sorry you didn't enjoy it, though. It is fantastic. Certainly in my top 3. Okay, because I also value enormity, obviously. From Matt. Not sure if this is useful for a podcast because there's no question. Oh, I remember this. Oh, shoot. Hey, I left my water in the other room. I'll be right back. Okay, I had to go get some more because I'm going to read this. It's a long one, but it's a fun one. All right, so Matt continues. You were very right about Bruno Cathala in a recent episode of the podcast, who won that episode's Games Designed to Be Unlikable award. Bruno makes games that would be just perfect for me and my wife, but then he often adds some unnecessary take-that mechanism just to ruin it for us. I know the feeling, Matt. I've been there so many times. You wondered in the podcast why he does this, and I happen to know the answer. A while ago, I emailed back and forth with Mr. Cathala because I tried to make some interactive but non-take-that variants for the red military Lord cards in Abyss. We really love this game, but we actively avoid taking those red Lord cards because we don't like stealing and handicapping each other. I asked him for some advice on the balancing of my alternate card powers, and also asked him if he'd ever consider publishing a small booster pack with the alternate military lords for us Care Bear players. That is awesome. I love that, Matt. Although I didn't really expect him to react to yet another random person proposing self-made variants, he took his time explaining that he really liked the variants and that he even wanted to try them, but he'd not like to replace the existing military cards because he adds this take-that element to his games very deliberately. To quote him, after translating from French to English, I think too many games no longer accept putting this kind of direct, almost naughty interaction into the game. So I want this to be an expected signature of Abyss. Now, he is probably right that the hobby is finding more and more ways of adding more positive forms of player interaction, but unfortunately for us, his designs are not very likely to change. To my surprise, he did ask me later, as if it was necessary, if he could use some of my ideas, and he actually wanted to propose the idea of the booster pack of Lord's cards for Abyss to his publisher. I have no idea if this will actually happen, and it would probably not be the Care Bear booster we wanted, but it was definitely a cool experience from a well-known designer like Bruno. It was so easily approachable in our hobby. As I said, no question. No, you're right, no question, but I just wanted to share that because I read that and I thought that is amazing. First of all, my hat's off to Mr. Cathala. And I love that you got him to say what I have been assuming for years. I just like to punch people and I want other people to punch other people because I think that's fun when people punch each other. Hey, more power to you, man. There's a lot of people like that. I think that makes him a bit of a dinosaur. But I appreciate the fact that he was kind of open to talking about alternatives because these days, why go for that boring, trite, played out, stale form of interaction where I steal your stuff or I break your stuff? Boring. Let's come up with new ways of interacting with other players that are positive, that are dynamic and exciting and innovative. I mean, I did a top 10 about this years ago, and I could probably do another top 10 now of more ways that games have come up with for players to positively interact with each other. So my hat's off to you, Matt. That was a wonderful story, and now we know the truth behind Bruno Cathala. All right, the real story. Okay, let's move on to Olivier, who says, I think I remember you mentioning the sandbox games are usually not a hit with you and Jen. You prefer to have direction as what to do. So, have you had this issue with Earth? I tried it on Board Game Arena solo and 2-player, and the amount of decision in the first few games overwhelmed me and triggered so much analysis paralysis. There are so many goals. This seems like a game that would trigger Jen's AP too. I'm pretty sure it's a lot better in person because it's easier to track your cards in hand and tableau at the same time. But above, other reviewers... All right. Oh, you know what? My phone is ringing. Hold on a second, Olivier. Phew. Okay, folks. Bit of an emergency, but it is all resolved now, or Jen's taking care of it anyway. So, it was Olivier and asking about... All right. I'm pretty sure it's a lot better in person because it's easier to track your cards in hand and tableau at the same time. But above, hear other reviewers critique its sandbox nature. Okay. I've looked at it on BGA, and yeah, I don't even know how you'd be able to play that game. You need to be able to have situational awareness of everything. Trying to keep everything in your head all at once, just only looking at individual things would be a nightmare. And so all I can say is, having played it a bunch of times, probably almost a dozen times in real life, I do not find it to be very sandboxy at all, quite frankly. The game has an incredible focus on giving players very clear goals. There are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? I think each player has 7 different goals that they are trying to achieve. And I guess maybe that feels sandboxy if you approach from a point of view is, right, how can I achieve all of these things? And you can't. You really can do well on, a preponderance of them, more than half of them, but you really do have to focus on, okay, this is the thing I'm going to try and make happen. And then when you get halfway through the game, you're like, I am clearly not going to make that happen. You need to be, while you're trying to make one thing happening, you have to be thinking about, well, it might not work. I may not be able to get any of the cards adjacent to this one that I need to for this particular objective. But that's why I picked this card, because if I can't make it work for this objective, it'll still help me with this other objective. And you need to keep your options open there, but you are always playing towards those objectives. What is it? Every time you play, I think it's like 4 different races, 2, everybody gets to do them, and then plus 1 other, everybody has their own personal one they get to do. To me, it's the antithesis of a sandbox game. It is very directed in the best possible way. It's one of the things that makes the game so fantastic. Okay, so I hope you get a chance to play it in real life at some point, Olivier. Vic says, I just watched your video on Games Culled and was intrigued by your comment on Motor City Roll and Write, specifically how you seem to be less enthused by combo-tastic games. Yes, Vic is talking about if you are a backer of the show, either on YouTube or on Patreon, every month you get a ramble video. And I've recently done a 2-parter where I talked about over 100 games that we got rid of from 2021, and Motor City was one of them, and I was trying to analyze, well, why didn't this work for us? And amongst other things, one of the things that I was talking about in that video was how it feels like we're kind of getting a little bit of combo fatigue. Because I've been talking about for years how awesome it is to have games that just give you lots of really cool combo explosions. And maybe we're getting to the point where developers are getting too good at making these combo engines because it just kind of feels like... Because the thing is, you have to go a bunch of turns without doing combos so that you can get a big explosion of combos so it feels special. If you're just comboing nonstop from start to finish, it kind of starts to lose. It just kind of, some of its specialness. But anyway, Vic continues. I've been playing a bunch of Luciani games recently. Golem, Darwin's Journey, Grand Austria Hotel, and the combo-tastic mechanisms seem to feature heavily in this game. I would agree. However, I'm also burnt out on trying to figure out the optimal combinations over and over, which I'm increasingly feeling is way similar to finding efficiencies in generating points, an efficiency puzzle game. This is in contrast to a tight tactical game, which either don't have this combo mechanism or hide it really well so it's not apparent. For example, Sabika, which is so tight and restrictive that I don't feel like I'm being efficient or really pulling off combo turns at all. However, Sabika feels too tight for me to try different strategies, which is leading to my main question. Are there games that provide a happy medium? Agricola may be one, for example. Can a game allow for different paths to victory, but a less combo-tastic feel? Maybe this is more applicable to worker placement or rondel mechanisms. Games that let me try out different strategies, point solidly, but don't feel overly combo heavy or too broad that allows or requires tactical decision making. Hope I made sense. Yeah, you totally did. I think that is a very good question. Where was the question? I'm just going to highlight it here. Are there games that provide a happy medium? Right. I think that's a great question. And yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think this preponderance of combo explosionism is a relatively recent phenomenon that was kicked off by the insane success of Gone Shown Clever. Before Gone Shown Clever, you had the occasional combo crazy game, like some of Luciani's games you mentioned there, like Grand Austria Hotel, where you could pull off a lot of stuff. But Gone Shown Clever was such a huge hit and was so naked about it. It's just like, hey, I mean, literally, the game translates into, oh, yeah, that's so smart, or you're so smart. Because the whole point of the game is, oh, how good it feels to do a thing that does a thing and 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 a thing, and that just, does dopamine rushes. And games are becoming more and more, it feels like. I'm not sure. I've not actually done a thorough evaluation of this, but it kind of feels like that it's becoming more and more common, and therefore a little less special. But right off the bat, to your question, I mean, games that still allow for a lot of opportunities to explore the simulation and come up with different strategies and all that, but don't rely on that. Well, yeah, pretty much any heavy Euro before what do you call it? Gone Shown Clever came out. I mean, let's go back to another list. Let's go to top.rahdo.com. So I have an easy way to look at more recent stuff, right? And I wouldn't include Earth. I would think Earth is fairly combo-y. But that's the thing. There's a difference, I mean, between a game that has combos, but you do them every once in a while, as opposed to doing them all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm still very keen on that. One of my favorite games of last year was Rise. I think Rise is in my top 10, and that's definitely Rise is a heavier board game equivalent of the Gone Shown Clever. Hey, just drip feed you super explosive stuff all the time. And it's interesting. I really responded strongly to it. Jen didn't like it quite as much as me, and I think it's the same thing at play here. So I would definitely not recommend Rise. What would I recommend? Of the top 10, my top 10 games of 2021. Right, what would I recommend? Not Revive, it does it too. The Guild of Merchant Explorers, although it's from what you're talking about, I don't think the Guild of Merchant Explorers is heavy as what you're looking for. Certainly not Planet Unknown, which was my number one game, and definitely pushes the combo thing in a big, big way. Does Woodcraft? Woodcraft doesn't as much. Woodcraft, I think, it has some. It pops up every once in a while. But the thing is, if it's the exception to the rule that you do some combo thing that you build up for quite a while, then I think it would probably work better for you. So might I suggest Woodcraft? And also, I think Come Together as well, which is not getting anywhere near as much love. I mean, look at this thing. It's so beautiful. For those who are listening, I was pointing to it on my shelf. It's literally right behind my head in every video you see me do. I think Come Together and Woodcraft are great examples of that more old style. Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of stuff to do. You have a lot of spinning plates. You've got a really rich simulation, but the actions every once in a while culminate into combos of things to do with each other. But it isn't like the reason the game exists. Unlike Planet Unknown or Rise or Gone Shown Clever, or the new batch of Roll and Rights. So there's a few. What about my top 10 from 2021? Does Arc Nova go crazy combo-y? I don't think so. Does Boon Lake? Boon Lake definitely doesn't. I wonder if that's why one of the reasons Boon Lake wasn't quite so well received by people. Because, again, it's more siloed and more straightforward. And although, I mean, it might be a little too restrictive for you because it does put it can put a harsh timer on you. So you can't really explore maybe to your heart's content because I'm kind of reading between the lines that that's something important for you. What about if we go back further? Let's go way back when to 2020. Hallertau is the very definition of trying to create big combo chains, but you have to work really hard in Hallertau to make it happen. Whereas I think it's kind of a mark of this new type of design approach where it's really easy. You're comboing off the wall all the time, even without trying to. Hallertau makes you work for your combos, and therefore they are much more satisfying as a result. And Anno 1800 was another one. Yeah, so I think it's still the norm that games don't do this. But they are becoming more and more common. So I think, yeah, there are still plenty of happy medium games. And I'm going to recommend, Vic, as I do to everybody, as I've recommended earlier in this very episode, if you want to get a better sense, I would say take your very brilliant and eloquently and very clear email that you sent to me for this show and post it to the recommendation forum on Board Game Geek. And how to find that again? Go to faq.rahdo.com and then follow the link in question number 5. And that will take you there. And I suspect you will spur a conversation among folks that'll be pretty fascinating. So anyway, that was it. And folks, that is it. I am done with my portion of the gaming question, minus that one question from Jack, which was excellent. We'll save it for next month's episode. And now we're going to move on to the stuff I did with Jen, which I recorded yesterday. Okay, folks, hold on. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, welcome back. We're going to continue with some game stuff because I think there's a few that Jen might be able to weigh in on, or there were specific questions that people asked, specifically for Jen's take. So, let's start with Andres, who asks, what is the best board game that came out the year you were born? I hope Board Game Geek has something in their database. And what board game did you miss in your childhood, up to, say, age 16 or more, if you wish? Games that existed at that time and you didn't know about them, but in hindsight, wish you had access to them and enjoy with family and friends. Dungeons & Dragons counts as well. I don't think you've talked much about your childhood board game experiences. Can you elaborate? So first of all, honey, we have to figure out what games came out the years we were born. Mm-hmm. You're not too precious about people knowing what year you were born, I assume.
Nope.
I was born in 1969. Jen was born in 1970. So let's go over to ye old Board Game Geek. Board Game Geek. And let's go to do an advanced search. Boop. Boop. And then let's do 1969 to 1970. All right. And then finally, let's sort by game quality. The best of the best. Well, there's some war games. Don't care about any of those. Don't care about any of those. Never heard of any of these. Not interested in any of these or those or the others.
Monad?
Monad? It's collect numbered cards to win.
Oh.
You're intrigued by that? Well, unfortunately, that was not your year. That was 1969.
I just thought it was kind of a nice looking box.
Well, that's
how I decide about wine as well.
Well, yes. Judge that book. Judge it by its cover. A lot of war games. And
how can you tell?
Well, you can just tell. I mean, Anzio Beachhead. Of course, that's going to be a war game. Leipzig, the Battle of Nations, Napoleon versus Europe.
Well,
that's going to be a
looks
war
like
game.
Tetris.
Polymath. Looks like Scrabble. If we were to zoom in, and so Russian. So it must be a Russian version of Scrabble or something. Oh. Paddle Pool, Air Charter, Chartbuster, Caper. That sounds familiar to me. Caper. But I mean, and obviously none of these are particularly well loved. The Board Game Geek has them down. I think there's only 24,000 games in the database, and these are all around 19,000. Yeah.
Tough a bit.
Huh?
Tough a bit.
Do you know Tough a Bit?
Nope.
Yeah, it's just nothing but war games and abstract games because that was the nature.
There's a lot of card games, it looks like, too.
Uno-y type card games. Gold Rush sounds familiar. Let's take a look at that. It looks like it could be a modern game, but I don't know. I don't know, Andres. I don't think there's any, quite frankly. At least
because we're old.
Yeah, we are very old. And that's the thing. I figured, we could put in our days, and there'd be at least a couple. But the highest ranked games, again, these are all war games.
Yeah.
Or just straight up abstract games.
Oh, that looks like a football one.
Yeah, and a football game.
Bowling solitaire.
Bowling solitaire. You know what? Ruel raves about bowling solitaire. He thinks that's fantastic. So I'm going to say bowling solitaire for my year, 1969. And then if we go to 1970, obviously for Jen, it's clearly Panzer Blitz. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Monad just because I like the box.
Yeah. Okay, and Monad, sure. There we go. We've nailed it, which is to say, I don't think there are any. But continuing on. Oh, but okay. So then you want to know up until we were 16. So let me go back and now expand from 1969 to 1970 to like what 1985 or something like that. 85, 86.
86.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 86. Now we'll probably start getting into some interesting stuff. Come back over to the browser, change to 1986, submit. And then again, sort by... All right. Well, first of all, we have played Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. I think it's great. Sometimes Jen has thought it was great. Sometimes she can't stand it, depending on her frame of mind. Okay, so you've got 18XX games. I'm not particularly... I can't imagine Jen would like them either. Survive is a very cutthroat game. Demacher, I would love to play Demacher someday. Demacher is apparently...
Demacher?
It's Demacher. It's German. It's a game that replicates the German equivalent of the U.S. Senate, and it's a very deep political thing, all about you're in different parties and you're trying to get the most seats, and it's apparently a very big, rich, and complex and very true to life representation, and it's gotten it's number 374. So although the problem with it is I believe it's also an incredibly long game, like 240 minutes. So that's the counterpoint to that. I don't care about Civilization. I don't care if I never played Dune or Advanced Squad Leader. So I think we would, I don't think we would particularly dig it, but I feel like we should play Can't Stop. We've never played it. It's a very famous push your luck game where you just roll and then keep pushing your luck because you can't stop. Then we got some more war games. More war games, lots of war games, more war games, war games, war games, war games. Cosmic Encounter, I suppose I should play it, but I just don't care. Scotland Yard, we have played. Magic Realm, I looked at once upon a time, wasn't interested. Yeah. Other than Demacher, I'm not seeing any, on this first page of things that have come out in our early days. I think it was not a good time for board game geeks of our ilk. Reifenbreich is a Tour de France style bicycle race game, which supposedly is very good. But not really that much into racing games either, as a general rule. We did play Dungeon Quest. Remember we played that at Graham's place in Eugene?
Wow.
Back... we played it. He had a copy of it, and we played it, and that was fun. But it was fun for the social ambiance. Not that I'd ever want to play it again. Code 7-7 supposedly is a pretty good game, I think. Yeah, but back then it was just all abstract mass market games, war games, and just fighting, just lots and lots of fighting, and there's just nothing. Just thing after thing. Oh, Talisman, Boggle. Boggle is 1972. That's surprising. I certainly played Boggle as a little kid. More war games. Just war. Oh, Tales of Arabian Nights. We have played that. Obviously not the original 1985 version. I'm sure the Fantasy Flight later version was better. Car Wars. Russian Front. Nothing. I'll go to the bottom of this first page. The 100 best games of the first 16 years of our lives. More war games, Starship Trooper, Tally-Ho. Yeah, I don't think any of these would be particularly interesting to us at all. Not a single one of them. There's a big fat wad of nothing there. Other than Demacher, although I would like to play a new modern express version of Demacher. So, but you did, it's interesting, you did mention Dungeons & Dragons. I have never played any tabletop role-playing game like Dungeons & Dragons or anything. Obviously I should. And I don't think you ever have either, right? You've never played...
No, I don't think so.
I would think you would know.
I don't know. I do have this sort of memory of sitting at a table and there's this other thing, but it could also just be a movie that I saw.
Yeah, people playing Dungeons and
Yeah,
Dragons.
I don't know. I don't have a really firm, like, yes, I've done that.
Yeah, I mean, we grew up in the 70s. If we grew up in the 90s, if we were significantly younger, I am sure there'd be quite a few games. You're like, oh my god, I can't believe we never played Settlers of Catan.
We were very busy with the Nintendo system and the Atari system, and I had a Commodore 64.
Oh, you were lucky. I did not know that. I would have killed for a Commodore 64 instead of my TI 99 4A. But no, I mean, it was just not a great time for what we have fallen in love with. Earlier, if we're going to before, I mean, apparently there's a lot of great old Sid Saxon designs, and that bowling game, I believe, is one of them, are absolutely amazing and stand up to the best of the best today, like a choir and whatnot. But apparently he must have stopped working by 1969. He was not doing the output. So, Andrews, I'm sorry. I feel like we're letting you down. It's a good question, but we're too old to give you a good answer, quite frankly. Alrighty. Jeffrey. But there was one more question. We haven't talked much about our childhood board game experiences. Can you elaborate? So I will say, my family, we, as a young child, we played Scrabble, we played Life, the game of Life, we played Monopoly. I think those are the big ones. I don't remember playing Uno. I don't remember playing Sorry as a kid. Mostly, I just remember Monopoly, which I didn't even play with my folks. We played it when Ryan and I would stay with my Uncle Jim and Aunt Darlene. They had a copy of Monopoly, so we'd play that with them. And my family, we played Scrabble a fair bit. And that's it.
Yeah.
We didn't play card games, really. My dad played a lot of Klondike Solitaire, but we never really got into card games at all. I know Jen did. In my early, it's just real boring basics. Oh, a lot of Battleship. My brother and I played a lot of Battleship, even though I don't think we were ever particularly impressed by it. Also in the 70s, we played Mastermind, but just because we had it, and what else was there to do?
Clue.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. I guess my aunt, Darlene and Uncle Jim, they had a copy of Clue. So when we went and visited them and sometimes stayed with them for a week because my parents had had enough of us. Get them gone. We want nothing more to do with these children. You take them. And so we played Clue as well when we were there. What about you?
Definitely Life. I think Life was my favorite of the games.
Mm-hmm.
I liked gadgets.
The spinner.
Yep, the spinner.
And the little cars you put your pegs in. Yes, those are good. Those are good gimmicks.
Yeah. Monopoly, of course. Like Connect 4, which we just played something similar.
I never had as a kid, I so badly wanted to play Connect 4 because the commercial was on all the time, and it's what? No, you didn't. Diagonally. Like, oh, you're so smart. Oh, wow.
I didn't even see that.
I don't know how good Connect 4 actually is, but I always wanted to try it. That commercial really worked on me, but I never had a copy of it. You're right. We were just playing Shelfie the other day. So you played Connect 4 as a kid.
Yeah.
What else?
Battleship, of course.
Yeah.
Clue. Sorry. Parcheesi.
Oh.
Checks and checkers, of course. And then my family had a game called 500, which is basically gin rummy that we would play, but we would score tens and the faces at 10 points. Aces were 15, and everything else was 5 points. So, and it was up to 500. Although we had games that went to 5,000 over multiple years. And I always enjoyed that because I was good at it.
Yeah. Yes, I remember when Jen and I were first dating in our 20s, and she was always trying to get me to play it because her family wouldn't play it with her anymore because she was such a shark.
Aww.
And the legendary tales of of little 6 or 7 year old Jenny, they used to call her, who was, let's play some more 500. I want to destroy all of you. And that lives on, but now Jen destroys me in a whole much wider array of games than just 500. Oh, you're right. And we had a chess and checkerboard too. I played chess a few times. Never got it.
Cribbage. Huh? I know you never played cribbage
with
me. But
or backgammon.
Yeah, but we had both of those as well.
We did not have, we had a checkerboard, or it was a chessboard, and I think Ryan and I just used the pawns to play checkers with it, and we played chess a few times, but I don't remember really being in love with any of that stuff. Mostly, what I did a lot of in, grade school were little makeshift pen and paper games where we played one we played called Star Wars, because Star Wars came in 1977, and so after that everybody loved it. And so basically one player had a bunch of little circles that represented their ships on one side of the A4 piece of paper, the other player had a bunch of triangles, and on your turn, I forget what it was, I can pick one ship and I can move up to 5 steps, and you literally just took a paper and just drew little lines, and then you drew where it moved to. And then so you just like deployed your ships, and we both had a Death Star for some reason with a little dot at the center of it. And the way, if you thought you were within range of somebody, the way you would shoot is you would take the pencil and you would hold it like this, and then you'd apply pressure to the top, and it would slide out and make a mark across the page. And that was like shooting at somebody, and it required a fair bit of accuracy and dexterity. And so we did that a lot. I must have played hundreds of games of that. And we would like make race games where we literally just on the piece of paper draw a map, and the way we were doing that, it turns how our cars, and we have to kind of just shoot multiple times around the corner and stuff like that. So we did that a ton. I don't know if there's a name for that. We certainly didn't invent it. Maybe we invented it. I can't imagine that. I'm sure other people have played such things.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah. I mean, if I had a piece of paper right here, I'd do it.
Yeah.
But you can imagine, right?
You guys let us know if that's something that you remember from your childhood.
Yes, I'm definitely curious now if that was a thing. I mean, Jen's never heard of it. So yeah, we did that a lot because it just required a pencil and a piece of paper, and you could do it anywhere where you had a hard surface. And yeah, variations of all kinds of things where you could just do by, hey, that's how you move, or that's how you shoot, stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think the main thing is that arcade games became popular and available in around the 80s. Yeah. And that would have been a lot of my gaming time with that. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to Jeffrey, who says, we frequently hear about Richard's top games, Gloomhaven, Pandemic, Shadowrun Crossfire, Twa, etc. Rarely hear about Jen's. For some reason, I always think Dungeon Pets, Pandemic, and Glass Road, but I can't recall some of your favorites. Care to discuss? Now, Jen did a top, it was like a 26 many, many years ago, back when we were still in Malta. I'm sure it's a bit outdated now, but it's just do a search for Rahdo top 10 Jen's games. It's actually in 2 videos, like number 22 to number 11 and then number 10 to number 1 or something like that. Yeah. And that was when we probably only played half as many games as we have now, because, it was quite a while ago that we did it, and we played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games since then, so I'm sure it's a bit out of date. But yeah, I believe Dungeon Pets and Pandemic definitely made that list. I don't know that Glass Road was out yet, but I can imagine it might make her list. But that's going to be tough for Jen, because she can barely remember the game she played 6 months ago, let alone the game she played 6 years ago. But I don't know. What can you think of any of your favorite games of all time, besides Dungeon Pets and Pandemic?
Yeah.
What pops into your head when somebody? What are your favorite board games?
The gears.
She is mimicking Zulk in the Mayan calendar gears. Yep. So Zulk in the Mayan calendar. That was on your short list.
The drop it in the
Amerigo from Stefan Feld.
I like the gadgets.
Yes, you do.
Obviously Pandemic.
Now, if you're really interested, Jeffrey, for the last couple of years, we've been doing a backer-only show called Gen Jogs, where at the end of every month, in addition to me, at the end of every month, I do my roundup where I talk about all the games I played and do a countdown. Jen talks about all the games we played, and she ranks them all on a 1 to 5 star scale. Now, that is a backer benefit for high-level backers, because people got to pay to see this woman, who is off-screen at the moment. There she is. You just barely briefly see her hand on screen.
Having ice cream.
As she's eating her, what are you eating? You're eating Tillamook frozen custard, dark chocolate, and red raspberry. That is very good stuff.
It's hot.
But, we do the rambles, which basically if you back at $2 a month, you get a new ramble video every month. And late last year, it was, I think, after the second year of Jen doing Gen Jogs, I said, hey, in December, Honey Pie, the ramble is going to be every single game you ranked a 5-star. Rank those. And as it turned out, there were 10. So, if you, more recently, if you want to know of Jen's absolute favorite games, for only $2, you can watch, probably over 100 hours worth of ramble content by now. So I've been doing it for so long. And one of them, from December of last year, will be Jen talking about her absolute favorites of 2022. And that's something we're going to keep on doing in the future. I'd retroactively do more of them, except, again, it would just be, as time goes on, it's harder and harder and harder for her to remember them. But can you think of any others, Honey Pie? You got Zolkin, you got Amerigo, you got Dungeon Pets, you got Pandemic. That's 4.
Earth.
Earth. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's still pretty fresh in your mind then.
Yeah. That was really a good game. What was the other one that we played with Game Boy Geek?
With Dan King, the Game Boy Geek?
Yeah.
We played a few games with him.
There was two of them that were really good, though, that we played with him.
Well, Earth. Are you thinking of the game where we were building up the Roman city? And we were drafting cards that said, hey, you could build an A1 or B2, and then you know.
Oh, right, no.
No, not that one?
Mm-mm.
That's the main one I can remember we played with him, those two. What else?
I don't know. I have to go back and look.
All right.
But I remember liking them.
Oh, we played that Tribes of the Wind, the card game.
Oh, yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's a favorite, but it was a good game.
But Earth.
Earth.
Or, Earth makes your short list. I mean, that's 5. There's Jen's 5 top-rated games of all time, in no particular order. Zulk and the Mind Calendar, Pandemic, Dungeon Pets, Earth, and Amerigo. All right, there you go. Jen's top 5 of all time.
Off the top of my head.
Off the top of her head. Number 2 from Jeffrey. What kind of gamer would you describe yourself as? And these are questions that were directed towards you.
Oh.
A live and let liver, competitive, cutthroat, or competitive at times, analysis paralysis prone,
Definitely.
calculating, or impulsive.
Well, I'm definitely AP prone.
Very. I can confirm that.
Yeah. I would say I am competitive, but less competitive than I used to be. Mm-hmm. So I guess that would be a little bit competitive at times.
Yeah. Maybe her family would finally agree to play some 500 with her now after all these years.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not impulsive. I would say more calculating. I'm definitely a...
Hence the analysis paralysis,
What did we call it? The long-term strategy versus the short-term?
Yes.
There are
Tactics versus strategy.
Yeah, I'm strategy. I'm strategical. Yeah, where you're not. You're tactical.
And I would certainly say when we first started, Jen was a much more cutthroat player than me. Much more ready to do a bit of the old ultra-violence, a bit of the old backstabby, a bit of the old throat-slitting. When we first started out in our first year of gaming, one of Jen's favorite games of that year was Tigris and Euphrates, which can be a pretty brutal area domination game. And I thought, oh my God, this is so mean and nasty. And just like, yes, let me destroy you on the field of acquiring land and building on it. But I think that's probably worn off quite a bit as well over the years.
Yeah.
Why would you say that is?
Because I love you, and it's no fun to destroy those that you love.
So does that mean if you were playing against somebody you hate, you'd be happy to destroy them?
I don't think I'd have to hate them. I think if it was...
So you'd be happy to destroy people you're indifferent towards?
I think if, I have gone to things where I've sat down and played with strangers, and it's certainly less hurtful if somebody destroys me if they don't love me. So I guess I accept it more from strangers.
All right. Okay. What type of game or games do you prefer? Cooperative, semi-cooperative, or competitive?
Competitive.
Yeah.
In general, yeah. Because co-ops tend to dump you in the deep end and make you feel horrible and overwhelmed.
And like you can't possibly win, which again is just more reflection than anything else on Jen's complete and total lack of fear of me as a competitor. Because at no point does she ever sit down at the table and think, oh my God, I'm playing against him. I have no chance. I'm doomed before we even start. This is why I don't like cooperative games. That's why I'd rather compete against my husband, who I will destroy because he provides no competition whatsoever.
That's not true.
All right. Well, then, how else should I take that?
Well, you win, I think you said...
35% of the time.
Okay. Well, that's only 15% less than I do.
There you go. Is it? No, no, it's 30% less than you. You're at 65. I'm at 35.
No, because in theory, we should each win 50%, right, at the time?
Mm-hmm. Anyway, finally, how do you feel playing games with Richard over the years has enhanced or strengthened your relationship?
Oh, absolutely it has.
He doesn't say with me, necessarily, but just in general.
Well, let's just assume he meant with you.
Yeah, let's assume.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been wonderful. It's a great thing to share with your spousal, beloved family people. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, there's a lot of things that I think we've enjoyed because we've been gaming together. Traveling and like that trip to Greece that we went. That was a game trip. And
yeah, cardboard and sand.
Cardboard and sand.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think, yeah, definitely. And also, it's just a great thing that's ongoing that we still sit down and play games with each other. Mm-hmm. It's awesome.
Yeah, because we can share a hobby that we both like.
Yep.
Because I don't particularly like gardening.
Or glass making.
Or any of the other stuff Jen likes to do. And Jen doesn't particularly care for most of the movies and TV shows I like to watch. So, yeah, I mean, with board gaming, something we found we both really enjoy quite a bit. And before that, we had, before we found Modern Designer Board Games, we really played a lot of Magic together. Mm-hmm. Because at the time, that was the only thing we knew existed. And I wasn't crazy about fighting, but it was, what else can you do? And before that, we used to play we were always on the lookout for cooperative video games we could play together. That would work well for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, gaming's always been something that we've shared. Okay, and that's it for the gaming portion, the end of the gaming. Unless you got anything more to say on that, Honey Pie. And if not, we'll move on to the personal stuff.
Oh, I think that's it.
Then, folks, we're going to move on to the personal stuff. And so if you do not want to hear anything more from the two of us about kind of the stuff we've just been talking about, but not game-related at all, then now is the time to beat feet, to get out, to take a long walk off a short pier. But
make like a tree and leave.
Make like a tree and get out of here.
It's a Back to the Future quote.
And... But before you go, folks, please make note of the email address questions@rahdo.com, because, as always, we need more questions. There's some very good ones this episode, but we want to hear from you. So look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for listening and or watching. Have a nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye. And now, folks, hang on. We'll be right back with the personal Q&A, including dogs.
Dogs.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. It's time for the personal questions and answers, and we're starting with Adam, who is a longtime listener, first-time emailer, and sports defender. Adam's not the first, and he will not be the last, but I think he is the most verbose. This is a very, very long email that Adam wrote. Very long. And as he said right up front, you don't have to read the whole thing on the podcast ahead of time. And yeah, you know what? I mean, geez, Adam, this has got to be, hundreds of words. Should I read it? I can read it really fast for the people who are listening. I mean, Adam made very many good points. I do not want to dismiss them out of hand by just skipping it, but what do you think, Honey Pie?
Oh, go ahead and read it.
All right, here we go, folks. Get comfortable. Thus spake Adam. I want to give some insight as someone who shares most of my views on society, but want to give a defense of sports. Football and sports in general, I view as entertainment. Similar to TV and movie, although not as artistically motivated, it brings me several levels of joy as watching the latest Ant-Man movie in the theaters. A similar sense of camaraderie of my fellow persons. I do agree the insidiousness when people use sports to do harm, but rooting for my team with others who share my view is extremely rewarding and great for my community. Also, sports has given me an avenue to get closer to my parents as I watch the game with them every week during football season. That's all wonderful. And that's... I think I had mentioned before, on a personal level, I could totally see the value of sports. I do think it is a shame that I think it's a reflection of the human animal that the best way that you and your folks can get together is to root for the downfall of somebody else. Because in every contest, there must be a loser. And all the drama and tension and excitement and esprit de corps you feel is because our team must destroy the other team. And that's really kind of getting into the deep-seated tribalism that drives humanity. And I'm sure this came up last time, is that really a lot, aside from, the rampant corruption, which is obviously an endemic part of sports. Look at the Olympics Committee and, FIFA and all of that stuff. But, aside from all of that, to me, it is a shame that we give so much time and effort and energy towards a pastime that at its core is all about, oh, we crushed you. Therefore, we all feel good about our group because we put your group down on the field of literal, figurative battle. And, I think it's wonderful that you and your folks enjoy that, and I get it. It's the way our brains are wired, because tribalism got us to where we are today. I just can't be happy about that. I wish you guys could get together on a Sunday and have that same togetherness over something that isn't at the expense of other people, that puts you above other people on some level or other. We're getting into like really deep philosophical roots of, human drives and the human condition. And It is endemic, but I mean, to me, sports is like the most on the surface celebration of what is our greatest weakness and could lead to our downfall. Is, yay, us versus them. We win, they lose.
Yeah.
That's the worst of humanity. That is our worst base urge, the otherizing of others, and sports is all about that. And sports celebrates it. It glories in it. So, but again, I do not mean in saying this, Adam, to take away the joy that you and your family get and that millions of families get. I mean, it's why I keep coming back to me, I see much more value in sports on the interpersonal level, on the local level, you going out into the backyard and actually playing sports with your direct friends. Because I don't think that if you're playing touch football with friends in your own local league, that there is that same kind of, the Eagles, I can't stand them. The Patriots, Tom Brady. I mean, I can't even think of examples. I believe these are all correct examples.
I think you've just pulled some names out there.
Yeah, but whereas I don't think that happens so much when it's your office team versus the office team down the street, because at the end of the day, everybody knows each other, and it is more about the pure joy of just having fun with a physical activity. Whereas professional sports is an entire multi-billion-dollar industry full of rampant corruption that really trades on tribalism. But again, I think it's great that you and your family and your friends can share it, and it creates a community. But it creates a community by siloing you against other communities. Anyway, I'm going to continue with Adam now. Adam continues. You said sports doesn't inspire anything good. I'm not sure if I said that, Adam, but I believe you that I did. I might have. I would like to, before you go any further, if I said that, I was really getting into it a bit much. Yes, of course, there's all kinds of Heisman trophies. I don't know. There's all kinds of charitable givebacks and stuff like that. And, and of course, I appreciate that sports can inspire young children to rise above. And there is, I think I've talked about in the past, since this is now a monthly segment, the Rahdo Hates Sports portion of the show, I believe I said, there are certainly admirable traits that sports do celebrate, like our human ability to go above and beyond, to do something that seems impossible, to celebrate our physical bodies. I think that's great. I find it a lot more attractive, when it's just all about personal achievement rather than, we got more points because we got the magic ball through the hoop or the goal or the over the line or whatever, as opposed to, no, look, this person is now the fastest person in the world. I think I prefer that type of sport. But hey, this is all kind of reflective of what I prefer in board games too. You're just getting into the nature of me as a human being. But anyway, Adam says, you said sports don't inspire anything good. While it may not on a societal level, I often feel inspired to get out and be active after watching my beloved Vikings on Sunday afternoon. Were it not for watching football on the TV, I would never have been inspired to get a pickup game of touch football going with some friends. That's all great. That's all fantastic. Getting out and enjoying each other's company is not the same as Star Trek inspiring people to go to the moon, but in my life it's had a big impact getting me motivated to go and be active after watching amazing feats of strength on TV. Yeah, so I just mentioned, how it can inspire children. You're right, it can totally inspire adults too. That's a very good point. I suspect there are other things that could have inspired you towards that, and I suspect there are sports that don't require the tribalism aspect that could have also inspired you to do that. I mean, figure skating, in theory, could inspire you to do all those things too. And figure skating is not about, my team crushed your team. But anyway, similar to how Captain America inspired me to get fit and start lifting weights. I approve of all of these inspirations, Adam. It's great. But anyway, Adam continues. To my point about sports largely taking up the evening news, I believe this is a symptom of a much deeper problem with media and the advertisers. CNN and Fox don't want to talk about public health care or climate change because big oil and big pharma line their pockets with advertising dollars. I'd argue that more time is spent on the evening news with breaks watching drug and car commercials than is even spent on sports. Sports, and really all forms of entertainment, is used as a distraction to fill their time because they'd rather not talk about the harms that the advertisers are reaping upon society, a symptom rather rather than a cause of what is wrong with society. I completely agree with all that. I think I talked about that a bit when I met in our last episode of Rahdo Hates Sports, when I talked about how, going back to the Roman era, sports were used by the emperors as the opiate of the masses. Hey, maybe we could get people to forget about all the crap we do that harms their day-to-day life by giving them some Sunday spectacle, this Sunday in the arena, and nothing has changed, including the advertising, because of course, back in Roman era, you better believe all those corporations were putting the equivalent of their stickers on the gladiators, the same way they do on their NASCARs now. So yeah, I mean, again, we're getting back to a fundamental deep dive, and so again, you're right. I would agree. In this regard, sports is a symptom as opposed to the true underlying issue. But it is, it's good to definitely cure the sickness and not worry about the symptom so much. But you know what? When the symptom is like rashes and boils on your skin, I'd like to take care of those too, in addition to addressing the underlying issue. And again, it's not like me not liking sports and thinking they're more trouble than they're worth personally has any impact on the multi-million-dollar sports industry. My entire life, I was a little kid and I was very I was subject to peer pressure, and all the other kids had their favorite sports team, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I got to have my favorite sports team too. I'll say the Rams. Why? Because I was born in April and I'm an Aries, and the Rams are literally, Rams, and that is Aries. And so like the horn and all that, and like, okay, I guess for astrological reasons, because I didn't know anything about them, I was like, oh, I have to say who mine is. And, even as a little kid, against my will, I was kind of being indoctrinated by society into what were intended to be a lifelong love of sports, which, as you point out here, is a symptom of deeper systemic issues that drive the human animal. And, the fact that we keep celebrating it to no good end, as far as I'm concerned, although, again, I do not want to dismiss any of the positive what you have gotten out of sports. I suspect you could have gotten all those. I mean, you mentioned Captain America. That inspired you too. That was not sports. And you can get inspiration from your fellow man at work or other things besides, the Vikings totally destroyed the Seahawks. There's another one I know. Yep. Yeah, it was amazing. Screw you, Seattle. Or oh, I can't believe the Seahawks won. What is wrong with you idiots? All that kind of stuff.
Yep. I just want to say, too, as a girl...
Yes, as a girly girl, yes.
I also had to have a favorite team.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think it really would much matter. But anyway, and I chose the Dallas Cowboys because I thought their cheerleaders had great outfits.
All right, there you go. Yep. So Jen and I are both nerds to the core, is what Jen is saying. All righty. Also, while the NFL has its own host of issues as a terribly run organization, it does inspire its players to do good and give back to the community. Often, throughout the season, we are shown images and videos of players giving back, helping those whose society has left behind. The Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, I think I said the Heisman Trophy, I'm sure this is what I meant, is given every year to a player who inspires good in the community and is held in high regard as the rest of the awards given out to the best of players on the field every year. I have to admit, Adam, I mean, that's all well and good. To me, I hate being cynical, but my distaste for sports is so great it even makes me, arrogant. I mean, I look at that very cynically as how can we clean up our reputation? How can we distract from the rampant corruption and the way that we're hoarding wealth and taking and basically taking major cities for a ride, getting the taxpayers to pay for all this stuff that they could easily afford themselves and all this stuff, but we do an award every year. Yeah. I mean, to me, that's just PR. And not to say that it's not meaningful and important, but I mean, I hate being cynical. You can see how much I hate sports, that it makes me cynical. But anyway, I think that sports can do good, but the seedy side of the business is largely a stain on it and is a symptom of society broken that we live in today. I think, after all that, I largely agree with you, Adam. And yeah, I don't remember how this came up, but I don't know. There are more sports stuff, so we'll table it for now, and we'll get to the next sports question in a few. Anyway, because it's questions, I'll end up with a gaming-related one to throw to what is yours and Jen's preferred favorite color?
Oh, that's easy. Purple.
Green, second favorite.
Blue.
Yellow, third favorite.
Ooh.
See, we've said our favorite and our second favorite before. I have no idea what Jen would choose third.
I think I like something kind of tealish, Mediterranean turquoisey.
And I would think that would have been your second over...
Yeah,
and turquoise is blue. Come on.
Well, you know,
I would like a different shade of blue, please.
Well, hand me your bottle, your water bottle.
This water bottle. Yeah. Which is for folks who can't see because you're listening, this is my water bottle that is full of 50 different shades of blue.
It's turquoise. Here, look at this. This is a coaster.
This is a coaster that is green and blue.
Yes.
Pick something other than blue or blue derivatives as your third favorite color.
All right. Fuchsia.
Fuchsia. That's kind of reddish. That's kind of reddish
Pinkish.
Purple, right? Pinkish. All right.
Pink.
For me, green, yellow, and then I'm going to be cheeky and say orange.
Oh.
So I thought you were going to say, that's too close to yellow, you big cheater. You just threw a little bit of red in your yellow and you get your orange.
Yep.
And I was going to come up with a different one if you didn't accept it.
That's all right. I would have thought maybe you would have chosen black.
No, not particularly. Actually...
anything metallic or sparkly.
Okay. I was going to say nude.
The wood color?
Unfinished, unpainted wood would be my third. If there's an option for that, I generally like to see the natural wood grain as well. Nice. And of course, we mostly play Euro, so yeah. Anyway, that was it for Adam. Now moving on to Andres, who, if I want to answer this question, I have to watch a 30-minute Kevin Smith video on the People YouTube channel, probably before you start the podcast. Fortunately for you, Andres, I did watch this already, and I thought it was amazing.
Oh, well, I want to watch
it is Kevin Smith, who is a movie director who Andres has talked about several times, because Kevin and Smith and I could have been, brothers from another mother. I mean, we've had very similar, you've heard it, we have such similar life trajectories. And he had a mental breakdown and spent a month in getting on-site care, staying at a retreat, and he came out of that and did this amazing half-hour video about how all trauma is real. Don't dismiss your trauma because you weren't an Iraq veteran. Just because if you are carrying around bad memories from your childhood, even if they're not something truly horrific, it still hits your brain just the same and can really wear you down. And so he did this really wonderful 30-minute long video talking about his own story, about what he learned, and trying to inspire other people to not just bottle up inside or dismiss their own hardships and trauma. And it was absolutely amazing. It was fantastic. I cannot recommend it high enough to anybody, folks. I will put, if you're watching on YouTube, I will put a link to it, the link that Andres put here, as I thought it was amazing. Anyway, in that video, Kevin talks about the other guy, aka his public persona that we all know. And now, living in this public personas, and how living in his public persona skin, he developed mental health problems. And I'm just going to say, you have stated that the person that we see on YouTube and podcasts isn't the real you. Yet another aspect, you can relate to Kevin Smith. Yes, I was definitely as soon as he said, oh, that's the other guy, and he had his whole section about how the other guy kind of took him over and left him hollow inside, that so strongly resonated with me. It was absolutely amazing. Do you think you have similar problems in your future? Or your situation isn't similar because Kevin had those childhood traumas that affected him a lot? I am happy to say I never suffered anything like what Kevin talked about that he went through as a child. Not parental abuse, but abuse from other kids and authority figures in his life, teachers and whatnot, and how it really gave him such a strong level of self-loathing that he carries for most of his life. And how the other guy, his public persona, eventually took over so that he could protect himself from that. And I do not carry the same kind of trauma. I've had an incredibly charmed life. So I don't think so. I don't think my other guy poses the same potential threat to me. Jen knows, as soon as I'm done recording this podcast, I turn off. Yep. Whereas Kevin ultimately ended up living in that other skin, so where it kind of took him over. But anyway, I'm sorry, I had to bring up Kevin Smith again. And Andres, I cannot recommend enough, folks.
I think it's wonderful that people are talking about their truth.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And they're airing these things and making it acceptable for other people to talk about.
Yes.
Their truth as well.
Yep. To me, I've said this before. I think it goes back to The Sopranos. I thought was an incredibly important show, not because it was one of the first prestige shows on HBO or signaled an increase in production values and, Emmys and all that stuff, but because it was one small step towards normalizing therapy. That if a tough guy like Tony Soprano could get something useful out of therapy, then maybe regular people could too. And, and in the years since then, it has just become more and more common. I can't remember the name, the big burly Democratic senator whose name I can't remember, but he very narrowly won. And then once he was in office, his office announced, "Yeah, look, I've had to go. I'm having to take a week off to get some more therapy because I'm under a lot of stress." And Republicans just want to rip him apart. See, he's a mental weakling. And like, no, he's strong. He's strong enough to face accusations like that and still be a role model to say, hey, your brain is just as important as any other part of your body, and your brain is capable of suffering mental damage the same way you're capable of suffering physical damage, and there should be no shame at all. And I think it's amazing that Kevin Smith did as well.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, Andres then continues. You hate professional sports. Something about net negatives? You're wrong. Without professional sports, we wouldn't have Ted Lasso. Mic drop. See, you're wrong there, buddy. It is not sports that made Ted Lasso what it was. It was actually interesting. There was just, I think, in the last week or two, there was an interview that I saw headlines of. I didn't watch it or anything, but I read the main thing is Donald Trump gave us Ted Lasso would be the clickbaity interview, because Jason Sudeikis, who plays Ted Lasso, is the co-creator of the show. Him and Coach Beard are really the two that created the character in the show and all that. Okay. The two main showrunners. He was in an interview saying that, their original take on Ted Lasso, that he was a very belligerent character.
Oh. And,
really negative and roughshod. And I don't know, maybe they had plans for him to kind of come around or
become
something.
Civilized.
And, or who knows what. But that was originally. And if you go back and look at the original, because Ted Lasso was originally created for commercial purposes in, commercials to sell, I forget what, beer or insurance or something like that, or maybe it was just like ABC coverage of NFL season, or he was literally a character created for a series of commercials. And if you go back and watch those Ted Lassos, he's kind of a jerk. And then he's like, wow, he went through a big change when he flew across, when they switched over. And the reason for that is because they were originally writing him as a continuation of that, a belligerent, gruff, mean-spirited character. And Jason's like, the first time I saw Donald Trump come down the elevator and what he unleashed on pop culture, and how since then we have become more siloed and more quick to anger and more quick to hate the other side, he said, I don't want to contribute to that. So they basically had to go back to the drawing board and rewrite Ted Lasso as literally an antidote to the polarization that was brought about by the absolutely ridiculous system we find ourselves in now. So, I have to... So, and honestly, here's the deal. I still do not give Trump's a thumbs up. I would rather not have Ted Lasso, and as it currently exists, one of my favorite shows of all time, and also not have Trump in the in public office. So, I fire back to you. Another mic dropped. But anyway, on a more serious note, pro sports is a business. Stadiums are not only business subsidy state... business stadiums are not only business subsidies states, cities, countries, etc. provide. Okay, yes, states and cities and countries are subsidizing. They are paying to basically millions, billions of dollars. The taxpayers are paying all this stuff that these businesses should pay. But anyway, what's happening with Disney and DeSantis in Florida? They're fighting. They're fighting about benefits Florida provides, or if you watch the end credits in yours and my beloved Marvel movies, which states provide tax benefits to your favorite movies. Oh, I see where you're going. Pro athletes earn too much, you say. How about Robert Downey Jr. or what he earned for Endgame? I bet he was on set for a few months and earned $120 million. Probably. Name an athlete that has such a salary, and they both bring people to seats, one theater, the other stadiums. So, I think your point is why I see discrimination and hypocrisy from people with different standards for things they like and dislike. Okay, I guess you meant that as a question mark. Here's the deal. I'm not crazy about how the entertainment industry either. I think that's also ridiculous and bloated and really problematic that, we celebrate and put on pedestals, and we always have movie stars and TV stars and all of that just for being actors. I've known actors my whole life. I mean, they're nice, good people. They don't deserve to be put on pedestals any more than anybody else. And it's ridiculous that that we have created a system that is pro-business above everything else. We did not used to be this way in our society. But over the last 100 years, we have made our society, and this is, I can't speak for other countries around the world, but the American society has been more and more and more and more and more business friendly at the expense of people. And that has allowed Hollywood to create, gather and hoard more and more and more wealth. And the same thing is true for sports. And the same thing is true for pharmaceutical companies and oil. They're all big, major industries, and they're all problematic. I completely agree. I love the fact that New York State had the cojones to say, who was it? Was it Apple that were going to say, look, we want to make, it was either Apple or Google, or maybe it was Tesla. Somebody said, New York, you have to bend over backwards, or we're not going to make a new data center. Maybe it was Amazon. I think it was Amazon. And we'll bring so many jobs and it'll be great. All you have to do is just literally let us live tax-free and take all the land we want for nothing. And New York said, no, screw you, get out of here. And so they obviously went off someplace else and found someplace else. And that other place has not really seen any huge economic benefits for all the money they're losing on the way they subsidize it. And in the end, Amazon went ahead and opened up offices in New York anyway, and nobody reports on that. That at the end of the day, our country has, largely, it's true for both Democrats and Republicans, but it's largely a conservative drive that has made, the Clintons were guilty of this too, has made everything easier and easier and more friction-free for companies to become corporations, to become mega corporations. And that is a universal problem everywhere throughout our society, that we put corporations above the needs of people. Because the corporations paid for the politicians to make that happen. And the majority of them paid for Republicans to do it, while the Democrats usually were fighting against it. But regardless, not to say Democrats can't be bought and sold too, but it's like a 10-to-1 ratio, on the divide there. And so, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's absurd that however much Robert Downey Jr. got for Endgame, I loved it. I thought he was great. I think, maybe he should have gotten $500,000 for that, maybe. And the reason he got so much money, and the reason sports figures make so much money, is because our society favors corporations over people. And it's just another way to tax the populace by making it easy for them to just take and take and take. Anyway. All right, let's see. Then Ben says, in your latest podcast, I'm sorry, did you have anything to say about that, Honey Pie?
No.
All right. You talked about Hogwarts Legacy. What are your thoughts if somebody bought the game used? It's my understanding that funds from used game purchases only go to the retail seller of the game. And if that's the case, I don't think J.K. Rowling would see any money from a used game sale. Thoughts? I don't think it's as simple as that anymore. First of all, hey, if you want to buy the game, buy the game. Just know what you're doing and, bear that in mind, that it means you really want to play in a fantasy Hogwarts more than support trans rights, because it is a battle line. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it is. But regardless, here's the thing. If you get that used copy and then you plug it into your Xbox or your PlayStation or you download it from Steam, even if money didn't go to the publisher, they will still track how much you play the game. They will still see, oh, yeah, look, we got another 100 hours. That means we should greenlight another game. And, not for nothing, J.K. Rowling, amongst other things she has said, well, you know what? I can't be too wrong because Harry Potter still sells like hotcakes. So that means I'm right, and trans people are a threat to heteronormative values, effectively. That's broadly summarizing where her stance is. And therefore, she brings more literal physical harm and danger to people's lives as a result. And so, as far as I'm concerned, you're still contributing to that when they can see, oh, look, you got the game used, there's another 50 hours played of this game, and that just further, in J.K. Rowling's mind, reinforces that she is doing the right thing. So that's kind of where I come down on that. But still, life's too short. Do you? If it's going to make you happy, I'm not gonna disown you or anything. It's just we have a difference of opinion on these things. I mean, here's the deal. I think the way animals are treated is terrible. We still have hamburgers and, at restaurants. So we're hypocrites too. And we should not be contributing to that. We should go full vegan. Although there's a problem with veganism as well. Over production of vegetables can be hugely destructive to environments also, in different ways. Not as much, but it's still problematic. So clearly, to be a truly perfect... this was this was a major thread in one of the later seasons of The Good Place.
Yeah.
A person who said, look, I'm doing everything I can to live absolutely perfectly, to never, and the extents that person had to go to and what ultimately happened to them as a result. Man, what an amazing show The Good Place was. But anyway, so I can't begrudge you because I don't need to have that burger at Red Robin for my birthday. I know what happened to the cow that burger came from. And I'll be honest, when I'm eating it, I think about that. And it makes me sad. But I still really enjoy the burger. So... we're all human beings, so don't sweat it too much, but just certainly, if nothing else, be an informed consumer, as opposed to just dismissing it out of hand, if nothing else. Anyway, though, continuing on, unless you have something to say about that, Honey Pie.
I don't.
Jen does not. Folks, we need more personal questions of a more fun to answer for Jen question.
That's okay.
All right.
People want to talk about what they want to talk about.
All righty. Daniel says, pop culture question, Hogwarts Legacy. I have to argue with your statement that most people buying Hogwarts Legacy are hypocrites. If I said most, that's not fair. As I recall correctly, it wasn't the question that are they cruel or are they ignorant? And my whole point was, well, there's a third category. They're just hypocrites, which I guess is really kind of cruel, but they don't think they're being cruel. But regardless, I guess it could have just gone back to the basic. You either are completely ignorant or you know and you just don't care. And I just kind of, I guess the hypocrite thing was kind of at the end of the day, an inconsequential qualifier. But anyway, you think that is factually wrong because most people who bought Hogwarts Legacy are non-American. Slightly under 1/3 of buyers are American, according to this particular site. Do you think those non-Americans are also hypocrites, even if they have no idea about the American gender debate? Daniel, it is not an American gender debate. It is a humanity-wide gender debate. Trans people are persecuted, are attacked, are hunted, are chased out of public squares around the world. This is not just about an American divide here. This is happening everywhere. There are major issues going on in the UK over this with, what do you know? Right where J.K. Rowling is, right at the center of all of it, spearheading the anti-trans initiative. But this happens in all countries where the right is vilifying trans people to basically pursue their own agenda by making their followers have something to be afraid of so that they aren't paying attention to the real problem that corporations backed by those right-wing forces are taking over their countries. You should be angry at corporations. You should not be angry at trans people. In the same way, you should not be angry at immigrants. You should not be angry at refugee seekers. You should not be angry at people who are having gay weddings. All these other things are just smoke screens to detract you from the fact that the right is generally more in the pocket of big corporations and are mortgaging our futures. Where do you think climate change comes from? Why do you think all climate change denial is on the right? Because the right have their marching orders from corporations. So yes, the fact that only 30% of Hogwarts Legacy people are American has absolutely nothing to do with this because this is a worldwide problem. Look into the harsh reality of gay and trans rights in Far East Asian countries. There's true or Arabic countries, or lots of European countries too. It's terrible everywhere. Yeah. So anyway, it's not just an American thing. But anyway, continuing on. I don't think you have anything to say about that, do you, Honey Pie? You're just cooling down with a hot dog on your lap there. What do you think about Eric Lang's statement that you shouldn't tell people that they're a horrible person and need to change their behavior or else, quote, end quote, if you want to make meaningful changes in the world, paraphrasing. I hadn't seen that because I have not been on Twitter for I don't know how long, and I'm happy not to be there, but I was able, let me see the whole quote, because I think you're misquoting him a little bit, because I basically just did a search for horrible person, need to change or else, and Eric Lang, and I did find the tweet, so let me go back and get it again. Eric Lang, need to change behavior or else. Bring back the browser. Alrighty, there it is. So, let's talk about the entire quote. As you can see, I don't even bother to log into Twitter anymore. But anyway, here's a too long, didn't read sales pitch for the far right pipeline. Quote, "You're a good person just the way you are, and the people who are trying to change your mind are insane." End quote. It's very compelling to normies, especially those who stumble into, quote, always online, end quote, unwelcoming left spaces. So, first half, he's saying, hey, look, my fellow lefties, here's the argument you're fighting against. And as you can see, it's a very attractive argument. You're a good person. Anybody who says you're not is ridiculous. So, our online left sales pitch is, and this is the part you quoted, quote, "You're basically a bleep person and you need to change your behavior in certain inscrutable ways or else," end quote. And Eric continues, "That's how most normies hear it." And by normies, he means people who are not really plugged into the online debate about social justice and all that. People who are just living their lives and are like, well, I don't know what all this stuff is about the trans rights and the chromosomes and the pronouns, and I don't know, I'm just trying to feed my family. And then, if they find themselves in a situation, the people on the right will say, hey, you know what? You're a good person. All these other people are crazy. You're not a bad person. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And Eric's point is that when a left-leaning person tries to point out, look, here's the systemic problems that you're feeding into with your indifference to the suffering of your fellow man. That, and somebody can make an impassioned treatise. I've done it many times myself in the wake of Black Lives Matter about how trying to really break through to people about how, systemic institutional racism is still a thing in our country. And as long as people keep saying, no, it's not, we can't really move forward. We have to all acknowledge there's a problem so we can fix it. But anyway, Eric points out that me trying to say that to anybody who was previously on the fence and didn't know what was going on, to them it sounds like me saying, you're a terrible person and you need to change your behavior or else. Change your behavior in these weird things that you don't understand, like pronoun usage or whatnot, or else. And Eric says, that's how most normies hear it. Now, that's not accurate, which is Eric saying, that's not what we're actually saying. That's not what we're actually doing. But then Eric concludes, feelings don't care about facts, which of course is an ironic twist on the Ben Shapiro line. Facts don't care about feelings. All you triggered lefty snowflakes just can't handle the truth and reality. When in fact, time and time again, there is no more reactive, triggerable snowflake than right-leaning people who say, a gay person drank this beer. This beer is dead to me. Talk about being triggered. All the absurdity over first it was one beer and now I guess there's another beer that's being canceled now. For all how right-leaning people are like, oh, cancel culture is the worst. They really like to do it quite a bit over nothing. The fact that a trans person said, oh, this beer is nice, and got paid to do it was literally the end of the world to these people. Talk about being triggered. So anyway, that was Eric's point. And if you're asking how I feel about it, I agree. I agree 100%. And really his underlying message is, look, still get the message out, but understand how it is what you're being said is interpreting and what the other side is saying. The other side is feeding them sugar and lollipops and, oh, you're so great, don't change. And we're trying to get people to change and recognize that they're part of a problem and people don't want to hear that. So it's tough to get that idea across. And I completely agree. I can confirm that from firsthand knowledge from 2 years of wearing BLM shirts and receiving more personal hate in my life than I've ever gotten for the rest of my 50 years on this planet, when all I was saying is, you know what? Black people are people too, and we should treat them the same as we treat everybody else. That's all I was saying, and you'd think the world was ending, much the same way as the world is ending when a trans person advertises a particular line of crappy beer. Anyway, though. So anyway, that's what I think. I assume you have nothing to say about that one, Honey Pie. Okay, then. Honey, this is what you've been waiting for. Jack says, with a trip over, what were our favorite moments, least favorite moments, surprises, disappointments, favorite food stop, and when's the next excursion?
Jeez, that's a lot of questions. Holy cow.
And that's just bullet point number 1 from Jack.
Okay. All right, well, let's start with favorite moments. we had a lot of really great moments, I think. I think probably we both enjoyed our week in Valley of the Gods.
That was your favorite? Just scenario, setting?
Yeah, I think it was...
I mean, there was no one moment there. That was just a week of just hanging out completely off the grid, miles away from anybody in the middle of nowhere, in beautiful landscape, and just living life day to day with just us and the dogs.
Yep.
And that was amazing.
Yep. And it may have been...
living off the land, living off solar, all that stuff. It was great.
Well, we weren't living off the land. We weren't, like, harvesting anything.
No. But. We do that back home, though. But anyway.
Yeah. Well,
no, Daisy was.
Oh, sure. You can tell that story?
Oh, my gosh. This little half beagle here became, definitely got in touch with her inner wolf.
Her terrier.
Because... we were in the middle of nowhere. We could let the dogs out. There was no road. There were no cars. There was, no threat to anything. So we just left the door open and let them wander on their own. And, Daisy caught and killed several mice. Just, we spotted her doing it a couple of times.
She dug up a mouse nest.
Yeah.
Underneath a bush.
Yeah, and we felt terrible about it because, Daisy, we feed you well. You do not need to do this. But, hey, dog's nature, we're all creatures of nature at the end of the day in different ways. But anyway, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Honey Pie. You were saying.
Oh.
This was your section, because I've talked enough.
Well, I'm sure you're going to say what your favorite moments
were. Well, this was definitely my favorite. There were a lot of great things that happened, lots of fun stuff, but that was by far the best.
Yeah, I think it was just us realizing that we are, of course, simpatico.
Yes.
And we can live with each other and nothing else and be happy.
Yeah.
So that was good.
And we were largely self-sufficient, too. There were problems, we had to solve them ourselves, and we overcame adversities and stuff like that.
Yeah, this huge dust storm that came through with gusts of up to 65 miles an hour.
Yeah, and all that. Yeah.
So I would say that was really good. I mean, we had so much. So I think one of our highlights was definitely after spending a horrible night in a sort of dispersed camping with a lot of noisy motorcycles and Jeeps and...
Which one was it? Oh, yeah, okay, I remember what you're talking about. Yeah.
We went to Canyonlands National Park after that, and we just lucked into a spot in a campground in Canyonlands. Just happened to be at the right place, right time. The hole that they had fit our...
Yeah, and that was on a Friday that we got that.
Yeah.
And on the beginning of a weekend, all those spaces should have been gone, and we just got lucky and found the one space in the entire Canyonlands that was available, and it was just dumb luck that nobody reserved. Yeah.
Well, and that it fit our rig.
And that it fit our rig, yes, because a lot of them were too small for us, definitely.
Yep. So, I mean, there was some really amazing, do you remember how celebratory that was?
Yeah, that was incredible.
And I think it was because we came from such a low the night before.
Yeah, I mean, that might have been our worst night, actually. That previous night, maybe, or certainly top 3 worst nights. Yeah. And we're like, oh my God, are we going to have to go back to some place like that?
Yeah.
And then
because there was we came to Moab in the middle of Jeep Adventure Safari 2023, and there was nowhere you could park.
Yep.
For lower money. Anyway, and I parked badly. Because we were tired.
Oh, you mean the previous night, the bad night? Yeah. And we were afraid we were going to get ourselves stuck or damage the rig and stuff like that.
Yep. So that was not a good night. Anyway, so let's see. Least favorite. Okay, I'm going to say least favorite was the night at that dispersed campground.
No.
Are you going to talk about Mike?
Least favorite is
Mike.
I totally remember his name now. Is it Mike?
Mike.
Yeah. The RV has electric heating and propane heating. Electric for when you're plugged into a wall and you can use that, and propane for when you're offline. Which, by the way, here's an interesting thing: propane is less climate intensive and energy source than electricity, which I was so shocked by. Why doesn't everybody freaking use propane? It's literally better for the environment than getting electricity from traditional power plants and whatnot. So anyway, that was amazing. So most of the nights we were using propane to stay warm because we were in places where it was getting well below freezing.
Yeah.
And it worked fine. The blower made a fair bit of noise, but that was pretty much it. But when it would shut itself off, it made this kind of squealing noise that really bothered Jen, and she was really nervous.
Well, I was nervous because it was getting worse.
Yeah. Okay. Because
at the beginning of the trip, it was just like a clunk, and then by the time we got around to meeting Mike, it was a.
Okay. Well, so she was nervous that it could be breaking down, and considering how cold it had been in some places, we did not want to be in a situation where it had completely gone offline.
Yeah.
So we went to, it wasn't in Moab, was it? No, it was someplace else.
It was in Page.
In Page, Arizona, the only RV repair place in town, run by a guy named Mike. We were recommended to go there by the Les Schwab Tires guys or something like that. hey, if you got an RV problem, go see Mike. He's the only place in town. I'm like, okay. And we met Mike and his Great Dane and his wife, and everything seemed fine. He said, well, yeah, I can get you a replacement for the motor. I'll order it today. It'll get here tomorrow, and I can install it. No problem. And we're like, wow, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, but we weren't even sure that we needed it, so we recorded the noise.
Yeah. So we said, okay, Mike, let's go for it. And he was giving us a look. I'm gonna go ahead and order one anyway because I don't have them in stock. I should definitely have this in stock. I'll need to get it anyway. You can come back tomorrow and you can decide if you want to get it installed or not.
And we
because when we went in the first time, we could not make the noise for him. So we were just trying to describe the noise, and he was like, yep, that could be your motor's the beginning of the end for your motor and stuff like that. But maybe you'll get another 100 miles. Maybe you'll get another 5,000 miles.
The propane heater motor, by the way. The propane heater.
The propane heater motor, yes. So the next morning, we were still not sure if we should do it because what was it? It was
$500.
$500 for the motor, and it was going to be like another $300 for parts and labor to get it installed. Parts and labor total is going to be like $800. And we're just not sure if we should do it, especially because he hasn't heard the frickin' thing.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of describing it, and we're not sure if it's even a problem or not. We have no idea. And so we spent a long time with my phone outside under the rig, Jen starting and stopping the heater until I could actually get a sound of it clear as day. And and I literally had to take it into an AI sound editing thing to remove the background noise so you could hear this particular skronk noise. And we got that. And we're like, okay, cool. Let's go back now, and before we commit to it, we'll have him listen to it, and then we'll know for certain we're doing the right thing. And he didn't even want to listen to it. He kind of refused. He said, "Could you just? We worked really hard. Could you just go ahead and take a listen?" And he put it up to his ear and he listened to it, and he said, words to the effect. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something like, "Yep, that sounds like that's the beginning of the end." Or that's your motor speaking to you that it's got problems, or something like that. Yeah. And we're like, okay, let's do it. This is not going good, folks. It took him hours to do it, and eventually when it was all done, and he took the old one out and he put the new one in, immediately, it turns out the sound didn't change at all.
Nope.
But the new motor was literally decibels louder than the old motor, and this motor, the blower, is directly underneath our bed. And when it turns on and we're lying in bed, we can actually feel this motor's vibration in the bed.
Yep, and it's loud.
And it's loud. And it's still making the scrunch sound. And we're like, Mike, what's up with this? Because Mike's response was, oh, that sound? Yeah, that's just a really common sound. They all make that sound.
That's your sail switch.
Yeah.
SAIL.
That's your sail switch. That's totally normal. And we're like, why did you tell us not more than 2 hours ago that this was the beginning of the end for your motor? And he's like, well, I didn't tell you that. Yes, you freaking did. And so now we understand why he refused to even listen to the thing, because he didn't want any culpability in it. I realize now. And so we tried, in our very Care Berry kind of way to just bring it up like, well, $800 and the situation is literally worse than it was before. And he immediately went from nice guy to full on jerk. Yeah, a passive aggressive, total. Well, I've never in my career ever replaced a motor that didn't need it, and I told you didn't need to replace it. And I'm like, yeah, you're ignoring the main thing where you said this is what it is, and now it's not, and now you completely changed your tune. And we just ultimately had to leave. And this came, and we had 2 more weeks on the road.
Oh, and no. We had lots more time on the road.
Well, wasn't it? It was 2, was it? I thought it was.
We went up to Antelope Canyon, and then we went over to Moab. Then we had.
Yeah, and that was all told about probably 2 weeks. This was after Vegas, and it was after Grand Canyon. Yeah. And so I think we were maybe less than 3 weeks left on the road, and every night we heard that, and we both had an incredibly hard time sleeping because every time we heard it, and more to the point, every time we felt it, I was filled with rage, impotent rage, nothing you could do. And I don't think Jen probably handled it a bit better than me, but both of us. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing too is he said, well. He's like, well, look at the old one. He brought it back out of his garage, and there was some rust on the tip of it. See? Look at this rust. I'm like, I don't really think that's that big a deal, but all right, fine. You're saying to our faces that this is clearly a problematic thing. He said, do you want to take her? I'm like, well, we have no use for it.
Yeah, we're just going to throw it away.
Yeah. But then the next morning, after our first night of sleeping with it, God, we got to get that old one back because this is terrible. We're not going to be able to sleep for the next 2-3 weeks. And we called him. He said, oh, no, it's already gone in the garbage. It's on its way to the landfill. Like, thanks. So, one of the things that's on our list to do now that we are back home is take it to a local place and see if maybe they did a crappy job of installing it. Because you said they had some problem getting it in position or something like that.
Yeah, so maybe the whole thing's vibrating or who knows.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to get that looked into and pay
So-
another couple $100 for it.
Yeah, that one night north of Moab was really crappy, but nothing compared to Mike.
That's true, because this is ongoing. And
Yeah, and this continues to affect our lives now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just I'm sweating now thinking about the whole thing all over again and our confrontation with him and his refusal to budge and all of that.
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was just the worst. So that was definitely, I think, the low point of the entire trip, especially because it turns out if we just left it alone, we probably would have been fine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and so we learned a valuable lesson. Don't get anything fixed on your rig unless you absolutely have to, unless you're back home.
Yep, because you need accountability.
Yeah. Because he knows, hey, well, we live on the other side of the country, so we're going to be gone the next day. He doesn't have to worry about it. Yeah. Gave him 1 star on the old Google Maps, but that's all we can do at this point.
Yep. So, clearly.
So anyway, so that was low point. That was least favorite. Right?
Yep.
All right.
Definitely.
Surprise. That was also a big part of the surprise. Surprise!
Oh.
Well, what else?
Gosh, there were so many surprises on the trip. Well, first of all, we were about 2 days off the whole time about weather. So it was constantly a surprise to wake up and there's snow, for example.
Yep.
On our first night, we had no idea, and we woke up and we were in the middle of a snowstorm. And we'd been actively trying to avoid that.
A historically out of place and much more extreme snowstorm than that area was used to.
Yeah.
And when we finally got through it and stopped at a local gas station, they said, yeah, if you'd come through yesterday, it was beautiful. Clear skies.
Yep.
But today,
Clear roads.
it's the apocalypse.
Yep, you've got 6 inches of snow on the roads.
Yep, and 50-foot visibility. And good luck.
Yep. So
Yeah, and we just had a series of, I mean, that was the most extreme one, but that kind of stuff happened over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I have now gotten an app, which is very cool.
Oh.
You say, hey, where I'm going from here to here,
Yeah.
and it will tell you how the weather is going to be for the next few days everywhere along that road.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. It does like the weather map animation clouds. It animates them over your trip. I wish we'd had that. If we'd had that whole trip, we would not have been 1 day off everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that would have been great. I did find that one.
Which was okay, but
Yeah.
not as good as this one I found.
Oh, I'm sure. But I think I paid $12 for the year for that. So let's remember to cancel that before it renews next year.
Oh, sure, yeah,
we
yeah.
don't need it.
Totally. Yeah.
Anyway, so...
Well, I mean, the jury's out. I mean, we have not actually used the one I found in situ yet, but it looks pretty good.
Yep.
But anyway, go on.
Surprises. I think I was really surprised how well we did off-grid.
Okay.
Especially because I was really nervous about, like, camping out in the middle of nowhere
Yep.
where, people could come by and kill me
Yep.
at any moment.
Yeah, we don't carry a gun. We have no way to protect ourselves. If there's a crazy person that the news would want to tell you about, even though you're more likely to get hit by lightning, but whatever.
Probably, yeah. So I was pleasantly surprised how quickly I became comfortable with boondocking.
Yes. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm surprised by that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at one point you said, I acknowledge every single thing I have worried about has not been worth worrying about.
Every single thing I worried about was not a problem.
Yep, every step of the way I'm saying, honey, no, it's going to be fine. We're going to make it up this hill. We're going to be able to park. We're going to find a space. It's going to work out.
We're going to be able to empty our black tanks after we've been in Grand
it's
Canyon and it's been below freezing for a week.
Yeah, it's not going to freeze solid.
We were going to have a big old poopsicle in there.
Yeah. Or Poop Mountain, frozen, yeah.
So yep, everything that I worried about did not come to pass, and a bunch of crap that I had no idea was coming our way came to pass.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop worrying.
There you go.
Because I'm not going to see it coming anyway.
Yeah. What's the show we're watching? Oh, we're watching the new season of The Great.
Yeah.
The third season of The Great, which more than ever before, so clearly establishes the personality differences between the male and female lead of that show. And every episode, at least twice, Jen has to pause and say, "This is us right here."
Yep. This is totally us.
Yep. So anyway, I guess we kind of talked about disappointments a bit. Favorite food?
On the trip?
Yeah. I mean, that's going to have to be that place in Moab, right? The Buzzies or...
Dewey's.
Dewey's.
Dewey's
Dewey in Moab, Utah.
Oh my gosh.
We went back there like 3 times.
It was so good.
Yep.
Yeah. But we also had that really good pizza at that lake place.
Oh, yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, and it was made like with cream cheese or something.
Yep.
It was a Alfredo pizza.
Wait, which one was that? Was that the first one at the golf course, or was that the second one by the river?
By the river.
Okay, yeah, that was good. But I don't think it beats Dewey's.
No, it doesn't. But it was still really good pizza.
Yeah.
I would detour to go back there and have that pizza.
Yeah. That was at a Harvest Host, as I recall. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, and finally, when is the next big excursion?
We are gonna, I think, take 5 months off.
All right.
And be on a road trip. November through March.
November, December, January, February, March. So leaving in early November.
Sometime in November. I don't know. We'll have to arrange because Thanksgiving's a big thing for my family.
And where are we going?
We're going south and east.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then how do we come back? We just go west and north? Or, because March time it's getting better, do we go north and then west? Mm-hmm. So we come back a different way and maybe the weather...
Oh, I think we'll have to wait and see how the weather is.
Yeah, well, that's the point. We don't have to plan it.
Exactly.
We can just take it one day at a time.
Yep.
And see where the wind takes us.
Yes, but unlike the first trip, I am going to take some lampworking stuff.
Yes.
So we're going to try that out on the road.
Yeah, that was certainly, we didn't mention it, but that, I think, was maybe your biggest frustration with the whole thing. Because there were times, even in that awesome week where we're just in the middle of nowhere doing nothing, where you kept saying, I don't have my creative outlet of making glass. And I don't know if that made you think differently about it, of how important it is to you. Because I think you always try to couch everything about gamer glass and, well, this is just my job. I have to do well. I have to prove that I am successful. I have to make money at it. And I don't know if you came away with a different experience. You weren't out there saying, I have to make money making glass. You're just like, no, I just want to make glass.
I think it was really interesting because I looked around and I had no creative outlet at all. Mm-hmm. I didn't bring yarn to knit with. I didn't have anything to paint with. I didn't have nothing. I had no creative outlet at all for 6 weeks.
You had games to beat me at.
Yeah, that's not the same.
That's creative problem solving.
It was really interesting because I think part of the trip was just getting to Vegas and doing Vegas. But after that, it was much more about, how are we going to live on the road and what are we doing on a day-to-day basis. So I did definitely feel the lack of a creative outlet. Yeah. So I'm figuring out how to do that on this trip without, bringing along 10,000 pounds of glass.
And I'll bring more games, but I want to try and figure out. It was a real pain to try and film run-throughs on the road. It worked okay, but the equipment I had for it, I had these boom arms that I could clamp to the cabinets above me, and then the camera would hang down. But you're in an RV. If you move at all, the entire RV shakes. Yeah. And that made the camera shake. And so I was always trying to be very, very... Don't move anything in my body other than my arms so as not to make the camera shake, even though the camera's not touching anything I'm doing. And it was tough getting the mic in the right place. I might actually get some lavalier mics.
What about a gyro camera or something? Would that help?
What do you mean? Oh, I see what you mean. Those are really for much more big, violent motions as opposed to just little... in theory, I could have cleaned them up afterwards. I just didn't want to edit it together. So it was definitely a lot of lessons learned about. I think it was much more frustrating to film games than it is here, where I've done everything I can to make it as easy as possible, and I'd like to make it more like here, there. I don't know how much I can, but we'll see. Or maybe I just do less run-throughs on the road and just do more talking to the camera. Maybe we do 2 podcast episodes a month instead of a run-through or something. Who knows? Because just setting up a camera and talking to a microphone, doing a top 10 list or whatever it might be is easy peasy. Anyway, so that's the next big trip, and more information soon. Thank you for asking, Jack.
Yeah.
All right, number 2. If I may offer a defense of professional sports.
Oh, no! Okay, I'm going to just go get something to drink.
And it's almost as long as Adam's.
Okay, I'll just listen as you read it.
All righty. Actually, could you fill this up, please, too?
I can get you something to drink, too.
I understand all your problems with sports. I even agree with some, but you neglected 2 reasons to make professional sports special: entertainment and communal experience. I watch football to be entertained, and a big part of that entertainment is the sheer scope of it. Watching the best athletes of the world compete against each other in front of hundreds of thousands of crowds cheering them on for a place in history creates the type of high-stakes tension you can't find in any other entertainment. Actually, it's interesting. I'm sympathetic to that. Even I've spent my entire life being in situations where I had to sit and watch sports and I was just bored out of my gourd and couldn't stand it. And it wasn't until in recent years watching the challenges on Survivor that I finally got a little bit of an insight into what it is that drives a sports fan enjoyment of the spectacle. And again, I would say, trying to, back your team on Survivor, it means at most just hating one other person as opposed to hating another state or another country like professional sports or another college like professional sports require. But anyway, sorry, Jack, I interrupted. I will continue. On top of that, it's one of the few remaining communal watching experiences, i.e. cooler talks, we have given the rise of streaming services. Everywhere else in entertainment, we silo ourselves into niche shows watched at different times with little discussion, but live sports has to be experienced together. That's a really good point, Jack. I completely agree. Netflix ruined pop culture in certain ways. I think, the drop and binge is terrible. And I'm glad, I see that even Netflix regrets it, because on some of their shows, like, okay, for this show, okay, we'll give you like 3 episodes, and then we're going to just do the rest weekly, because doing weekly episodic shows is so much better for cultural impact. Game of Thrones would never have the same kind of impact on, pop culture if, hey, here's the entire season. Everybody can watch it in one night, and within a week they will have forgotten about it. But no, because we live with it for weeks and months. And you're right. Certainly, professional sports still does that. It's appointment viewing. Yes, you can watch it later, but nope. I would imagine, Jack, you're saying that it is enhanced knowing that you are watching it live at the same time everybody else is watching it. So I get that. That's a fair point. And don't forget the stories. Heroes, villains, comebacks, upsets, underdogs, and every other imaginable storyline you can conceive in sports. And they're created from a game played without scripts, actors, or special effects. Any board gamer can at least recognize the wonder that a simple game can captivate the attention of millions. Football is my preferred sport. I assume you mean American football, Jack. Precisely because it's the most board game-like out there. It is turn-based, after all, and provides a type of strategic and tactical play that tickles my tabletop enthusiast soul. Anyway, thoughts? Does this impassioned defense move you in any way, or are professional sports still too tainted in your mind by those football hooligans from England? I promise you, we're not all that bad. These are all good points. Adam had really great points too. At the end of the day, I would believe you could get all that kind of stuff from different pursuits as well that do not, on some level, require you to say, screw you, Vikings, or Vikings fan, And I realize in a lot of cases that's just good-hearted, good-natured ribbing and whatnot. But I have seen, what did you call it? The football hooligans, not only in England, but everywhere, my entire life. I have seen far more of the negative, the bad vibes that come out of people as a result of professional sports than I ever have the positive stuff you're talking about. And I come from a family, Jen's dad, every time we'd go to Thanksgiving, I had to sit and watch the game with Jen's dad, and Jen's dad would fall asleep in a turkey coma, and meanwhile, now I'm stuck here watching this game. Jeez, can I watch anything else? Okay, I'll just read all the titles of the books on the bookshelf one more time.
A lot of them were fishing.
Yeah, a lot of them were fishing. Yeah, it's there are good things and bad things about everything. And my life experiences have brought me to the point where everything you said that is good, I think you can find in ways that don't require 20% of all of society's attention, that that can be done more reasonably, that don't have the taint of corruption, that don't have the taint of tribalism associated with it. I believe Survivor fans, diehard fans, don't vehemently hate each other because somebody is rooting for Daria and somebody else is rooting for Michael in the final two. At the end of the day, they're all still Survivor fans. And I'm sure, Jack, you would say, hey, we're all still sports fans. That's not what I see most of the time. It's stereotypical, the football hooligan, but there's just way too much of it, because at the end of the day, as I've said before, I think everything you just talked about comes from tapping into those deep, deep primal urges that we all have to other ourselves from others and say, look, I'm better than you. You're worse than me because your team lost and my team won. And then on top of that, there's all the other things that layer on top of it. But you make a good argument, Jack. Another sports question, kind of. Many of the criticisms and more that I have against professional sports could be levied at the movie and TV industry, which you yourself have alluded to. Would you be okay if society decided movies and TV aren't worth it and got relegated to small local productions where actors were paid far less? Not meant as a gotcha, but more would you want to consider if you're holding a different standard for a piece of entertainment like you and yours? Honestly, that would make entertainment much, much better. What you just described would be fantastic. Everybody these days is wailing about, the dearth of great cinema and TV and how things used to be so much better and now everything is homogenized and commercialized and focus grouped down to because every single element of Hollywood is designed for the sole purpose of making money. And you can't get, like in the 70s, the Brat Pack of Spielberg and Coppola and Scorsese and, De Palma and all these who, we came to tell stories and to use this as art. And what do you know? We got rich doing it too. Now, the art has been subsumed by the getting rich. And again, that gets back to what we were talking about earlier, because that is what our society is literally set up to do. That is the engine that we have created for ourselves. And I think it's equally ridiculous. I don't think it's as problematic, though, because for the most part, fans of Tom Cruise aren't at the necks of fans of Matthew McConaughey.
That's true.
Yeah. It doesn't have that extra element. It's just as absurd that we have, but sports, it gets 20% of every newscast, of every hour, and it has now for at least half a century. Entertainment programming for most of my life had 1/2 hour a day, Entertainment Tonight, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's ballooned much more now, but still, entertainment news is nowhere near as ubiquitous as sports news. Although, as you point out, sports is just another form of entertainment. But I think there are different drives behind it, because it is tapping into our joy at the suffering of others, rather than Hollywood, which at the end of the day is tapping in to our appreciation for beauty and art. I'm not saying all of Hollywood is beautiful in art. I'm not saying they can't make movies that tap into the same tribal drives as everything else. But I do think our appreciation of cinema comes from a different place than our appreciation of sports, even if at the end of the day, they're both just entertainment. Anything to say about that, Honey Pie?
Yes.
Oh, whoa. Okay. Step back, everybody. I'm going to get a drink of water.
Okay. So, about the thing about if you had your local production companies or whatever.
If our society
was more oriented towards local performances.
Yeah.
Well, I just think about how things used to be. And people, families would put on plays for themselves or each other or whatever. And like royal families would put on their plays for each other and stuff like that. I'm just thinking, if you didn't have to work for a living, if you had, say, universal basic income, maybe...
Am I going to have to go out and get my Yang Gang shirt on now? Is that what's happening?
I'm just saying maybe people would have some outlet for some creativity and some community-minded stuff rather than and time and energy for that. And I think that would be a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
There's something in our local area that's called like Music in the Summertime or something like that.
Yeah.
And the local government has just ponied up a couple $100 to pay a band to come and play in the
local park. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you could just come and listen to it, and it's wonderful, and it's just a community building thing, and it's nice to see other people out, and of course the kids are out running around, and people bring their dogs, and sit next to them on the little picnic blankets and stuff. And just how wonderful is that, and how fabulous would that be if, as a community, all the communities had something like that going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I think, Jan, I agree. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Can we please rework society to value that more than corporations getting richer and richer and richer and hoarding more and more wealth until the proletariat has had enough and there is revolution. Anyway, question number 4. Jen, do you read any fiction in the fantasy or sci-fi genres? Do you have favorite novels in either of those? My impression is that you're more drawn to nonfiction, or at least grounded fiction. Is that true? And if that's true, why do you think that is? And if it's not true, would you say there's a genre you like more than others? Jen is busting out the Kindle as we speak.
Yep, I am.
To look at some recent books she's read.
I just downloaded. One of my favorite authors. Although now that I've read a bunch of his books, his voice is a little bit tired to me, the way he writes. I get kind of tired of it. But I do love what his research and how he brings conclusions to his books. And that guy's name is... Oh, it won't give me... It's Douglas Richards. Douglas
Richards. Douglas E. Richards.
Yeah. And basically...
And is he a science fiction author?
He's a science fiction, but it's future fiction. So it's about how...
Speculative fiction about
how
what society is going to be like
tech
in
is gonna
50 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is fascinating, and how, some of society is dealing with that and everything. So I would highly recommend him, although, as I said, after you've read a few of his books, his voice gets very familiar the way he tells his stories. But nonetheless, he's really good at the research. So I would say that. There's another guy that I like. Let me see if I've got one of his books in my Kindle at the moment. Sorry. I didn't know this was going to come, or I would be a little bit more prepared.
We can pause if you need.
I might need, because I've got a whole bunch of books.
She's got a lot of books to scroll through.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Are we paused?
I'm pausing now. Okay, she found a few more. The problem was every time she would open a book to look at the cover to see what the author's name is, Kindle says, "Oh, you want to read the book?" and would just skip the cover.
Yeah.
So she's kind of looking at tiny little thumbnail covers, and who are they?
Okay, well, A.G. Riddle.
A.G. Riddle.
And P.J. Manny.
P.J. Manny.
Yeah,
Are they more the same? Is that
similar? Yeah, kind of this
futurist sci-fi?
Sci-fi, yeah.
So, to Jack's question, that would be the genre you like more than others. Science fiction, but not like Dune or Star Wars, but rather science fiction that is very grounded in just the day after tomorrow-y type stuff.
Yep.
Are all these books, I assume, kind of optimistic views of the future? Yeah, because there's a whole genre, of course, of, look how dystopian it's all going to be.
Yep.
So you also appreciate the positive, look, we're going to use technology to solve our problems. Isn't that going to be good? Because that's what we've always done throughout our entire history as a species. Why would we suddenly stop doing that?
Andrew Mayne as well.
Who?
Andrew Mayne, M-A-Y-N-E.
M-A-Y-N-E, Andrew Mayne. Another one. Again, same kind of stuff?
Yep.
So that is what you've become addicted to.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all you read these days.
Well, no, I've got a whole bunch of other stuff. But like last night, I was trying to stop doom scrolling.
Uh-huh.
So I just went, okay, I've got to go. I'm sure that that Douglas Richard has something I haven't read.
I must not have read one of his books.
Yep.
Yes.
So I went and found one, and I downloaded it and started reading it last night because I was like, I've got to get off Instagram.
Yeah. So I would think, to Jack's question of, well, why is it your favorite? I would think that's probably self-evident.
Positive expectation of good things happening in the future and technology helping us. Yes.
That's what you want to see.
Yep.
And then these are not like, hundreds of years in the future Star Trek utopias where, hey, we have food replicators and warp drives. These are more 50 years from now.
This is more like 5 or 10 years from now.
Oh, wow.
You know, interactive contact lenses and getting chips stuck in your brain that help you access the internet at any time. All sorts of stuff.
Fun stuff. Fun ideas.
Fun ideas,
yep. Get you excited about the future instead of depressed about the future.
Yep.
All righty. All right. Thank you, Jack. Let's move on to...
let me
But wait. There's more.
There's another
one.
I really like. And she did a wonderful series. Her name is Charlie Holmesburg.
Charlie Holmesburg.
I think that's what it is. Let me just see if I can find her again.
Charlie Holmes.
Holmberg.
Charlie Holmesburg. B-E-R-G, yes.
Yep. And she did.
She does fantasy.
So the Paper Magician, the Spellbreaker, Glass Magician, Master Magician. She's written quite a few books. So basically, I read anything that she comes out with.
Why do you like her?
I like her because, well, I really enjoyed this Magician series that she did.
Yeah.
That was really interesting because I did like Harry Potter, but now I need to read something else. So as far as I know, Charlie is fine. But yeah, really interesting take on how magic could be, in a different kind of universe.
From the covers, it looks like it's Victorian era setting.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Okay.
I mean, that's sort of a bit steampunky feeling.
Yeah. Real magic in a Victorian era setting. Yeah, all right.
Yep.
What was it? That was Charlie in Holmberg.
Yep, and it's a lady.
A lady, yes.
And her name's Charlie.
Okay. All righty. Very good, Jack. I think that's the most reading information Jen's given thus far. All righty. Jeffrey says, 1, I was interested if any of these movies had an effect on your life prior to the Black Lives Matter movement. And if so, was there one that stood out to you? Or a different one not listed? And you list specifically, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, To Kill a Mockingbird, In the Heat of the Night, Mississippi Burning, Crash, Gran Torino, just to name a few. I have seen every single one of those movies. I think they're all powerful and affecting. Several of them I saw, To Kill a Mockingbird, Guess Who's Coming Together, I saw growing up as a kid. I remember, just really just being blown away by Mississippi Burning when I saw that as a teenager in high school. But actually not on your list, I think, is probably the most impactful movie. And I can't remember the name of it now. It was based on a John Grisham novel and starred Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson. A Time to Kill. A Time to Kill is about a black man who is on trial for act of vigilantism against a couple of racists who did absolutely despicable things, and who was right and who was wrong, and the idealistic white lawyer who tries to defend him and come to see the world from his perspective and all of that. And it was a very powerful movie. I think it was probably the movie that made Samuel Jackson a star, because it's very, very memeable. And everybody remembers the big dramatic court scenes where he kind of broke down and all of that. But to me, you can find it very easily if you just do a YouTube search for A Time to Kill jail scene, or I think it's prison scene, because people don't realize there's a difference between a prison and a jail, where he's just talking quietly to Matthew McConaughey about why I hired you and why you're my secret weapon, because you're one of them and you see the world from their perspective and you see me the way they see me. And it just made me look at how I see Samuel L. Jackson, or at least the character he played, and it was very powerful. I can't recommend it enough. In the Heat of the Night. Do you have any, Honey Pie? I was mostly directed towards me, but I don't know if you have anything along those lines.
I think out of all those, the only one I've seen is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously that's an amazing film.
All right. They didn't make you read it in grade school? These days it's getting banned all over the place, but once upon a time it was required reading.
Yeah, I thought I'd seen it as a movie, but maybe I read it.
Oh, it's a very famous movie too. Chances are you've seen and read it, probably. Okay, moving on to number 2. On the topic of immigration, I'm always dumbfounded at the mindset that immigrants, particularly those from Mexico and other Central American countries, are viewed in a negative light. Donald Trump, of course, amplified those thoughts by labeling Mexicans as rapists and murderers, and then proceeded to build his ridiculous wall. He tried and failed like the loser that he is. Anyway, to me, that was an opportunity lost. Why can't we encourage legal immigration, embrace different cultures, and benefit from our own country by growing the tax base and providing a willing workforce? I realize there's issues surrounding drugs and firearms. Way overblown. There are not. Those are total straw men. But anyway, it seems like we could find a better way to streamline and encourage immigration rather than demonize it. Where do you and Jen stand with our immigration policies?
I think
Jen
that
weighs in.
The best parts of our history have always been when people come together and ideas are shared. Whether that's in Istanbul, back in...
Oh, you're talking about humanity.
Yeah.
Not just America. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In Istanbul and back in like the 1000s.
In the Middle East, when that was the center of learning and scientific advancement, while Europe was in the Dark Ages and all of that.
Yep. Yep. That was amazing. You think about how America was when we first were all getting together, and the amazing creativity and progress that we made in 17.
Well, for the first half of the existence of our country, we had completely open borders.
Yeah.
And it was those open borders. Welcoming. Yeah, it was those open borders that made our country into what it is today.
Absolutely.
It wasn't until the early 20th century that fearmongers started trying to rile up the populace against the secret weapon that America had always had, that they had totally open borders, that anybody from anywhere in the world could come here and try to make a better life for themselves. And you know what? People who are willing to pick up their entire lives and move halfway around the world, they're what you call go-getters.
Yep, and they are make-it-happeners.
Yes, and that's the backbone of what made our country so strong. And we are an aging country now.
Yep.
We are, same as all these other countries, Japan and and Korea. Oh my God, France. It's so insane. Just how our birth rate is falling. And how do you solve that? Open up the frickin' borders. Let people come in. Let people do the jobs that none of us want to do anyway.
Yeah.
Everybody complain about, nobody will come and do all this work no matter how much I raise the rates. But at the same time, I dare not let those dirty foreigners come in and do the work that nobody wants to do. It's absolutely absurd, and it spits in the face of what made America, once upon a time, the greatest country in the world. Because it was truly a beacon. It's what it says on the frickin' Statue of Liberty. Give me your huddled masses and all that. Yeah. So yes, it's absurd. And it's just another example of our obsession with allowing corporations to run roughshod over us at the expense of the almighty dollar. And well, hey, what do we have to do? We have to demonize other people to distract people from the fact that the rich, the super rich, are basically hoarding all wealth for themselves. And, as fast as they possibly can for no reason other than human avarice.
Okay, but we just watched a 60 Minutes program last night about the Jesus Christ Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, the Mormon Church, yes.
They have 150 billion...
Yeah, just sitting around in a bank doing nothing.
Sitting around in trust funds for their rainy day fund. They're not using it to better their constituents or their people or their parishioners or the world or their communities. They are sitting $150 billion dollars. This one church.
Yep. Yes.
Billions.
Yep.
It just blows me away.
Yeah.
And this is a church.
Yep.
A church that is supposed to be...
It's a business.
Okay, but I'm saying...
It's another corporation.
Ostensibly, it's a church.
Right, and it's no different than any other corporation.
Well, I wish religious people would wake up and stop.
I wish conservative people would wake up and start demanding from their representatives, hey, stop putting corporations ahead of me. Tax them instead of me.
Yeah.
Open up the borders so that people like me, hardworking, blue-collar people just trying to make a life that's better for themselves, can come and work next to me.
Yep.
And revitalize my community that's dying. Because everybody's leaving, because all the corporations are saying, no, we just want everybody in one place. I mean, yeah, the solution to so many of our problems is actually, I want to say open borders. I want to say, to hell with it. Go back to it. Let's get rid of borders across the board. And I realize that might be a bit Pollyanna, a bit naive and whatnot, but not by much. And again, that was the engine that made this country great. And as soon as we closed our borders, and the more we close our borders, the sicker and weaker we get as a society.
Yep. And we're not getting the fresh influx of ideas and creativity and energy.
And passion and drive and all that. Yeah, it's absurd. It's absurd. And again, it's all just fear-based politics to hide from the reality of what the real problems are what is at the heart of all our real problems. Number 3, the universe and atheism. Let's say you could travel at the speed of light, like a photon, and that warp technology and wormholes are only science fiction. The following are travel times. Out of our own solar system, it takes 2 years to get out at the speed of light. The nearest star, Proxima Centauri, 4 years. If you look at the Delta Airlines flight to Proxima Centauri, it would take about 5 million years to get there. Now consider that our own little galaxy spans 100,000 of those light years. Not our solar system, our galaxy. And that there are an estimated 2 trillion other galaxies in our universe. And there could be multiple universes. How audacious and arrogant is it of us to think there could be a God that is preoccupied with us, one of millions or billions of plant and animal species that has existed for a tiny blip of time on our infinitesimally small planet, and that this God assumes a human-based existence with notions of good and evil that are unique to us. Religion, to me anyway, is a human-centered creation with a rich history and no foundation in truth. So, how were you and Jen? Well, first, do you have anything to say about all that, Phi?
Well, that is totally...
Yeah.
I mean, yes, of course. Of course.
We can't, I mean...
There's no way.
It made perfect sense to me that, in our early development, one of the first things we grasped on is, wow, we are now smart enough to realize just how much we don't know. But we got to try and make sense of all this stuff. All this stuff floating in the sky, that sun, it gives us our life. Well, it's the life giver. So let's worship it so we can get more life. I mean, it makes sense. But at some point, you have to realize, oh, well, we now know that it is actually just a big, gigantic ball of gas. And that's held together by, and all the stuff we know now. And you could let go of those. But it's so ingrained into us, and generation after generation after generation just keeps reinforcing it. Although... My apologies to all my religious listeners. You know, in the same way that all these countries around the world are aging fast because they refuse to allow in immigrants, the churches are getting emptier and emptier very, very fast because they refuse to acknowledge that, yeah, you know what? Evolution is a thing. And science is real. And that, the earth wasn't made in 7 days. Of course, I'm talking about much more extreme. I mean, there are open, thoughtful, and, secularish or science-y type churches as well. But yeah, it's on a downward swing and continues to be generation after generation after generation, and it has been that way for literally centuries now. It's just at one point, literally 100% of all human beings believed this, and so it's going to take a while to get down to 0%. But we're on our way. We definitely are. But anyway, so how were you and Jen's beliefs shaped? Were you compelled to attend church as children? Was there a book or TV program, a teacher or mentor in your life that informed your beliefs? What severed the guilt shackles for me was Thomas Paine's An Age of Reason that I read at a young age that ultimately led me towards my current agnostic, if not atheistic, beliefs.
Oh, interesting. Well, I can remember when we were growing up, I had a friend who was... I don't have to think, was she Mormon? Was her family Mormon?
Uh-huh.
Probably. Anyway, she invited me to go to church with her one time. And
because your family did not go to church.
No, we never.
You were a very secular family. Yep. There was no talk, there were no Bibles, there were no crosses, nothing. Just nothing was mentioned.
Nope.
Your dad is a hardcore atheist, I imagine.
Yes.
Yes. And your mom, maybe she was at one point, although later in life she found religion.
She found Buddhism.
Yeah.
Although she shopped all of the religions along her life. she's but anyway.
But there was no religion in your household growing up at all.
No, but I can remember.
There was no anti-religion, I assume.
Well, I did ask. Now, I think it was when we were living in Cheney, so I must have been 7, maybe, or 8, maybe. And I asked to go to church with Sheila's family because they invited me to go with them.
All right.
And Mom said no.
Ooh, wow.
So, and I
because she did not want you to be indoctrinated?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think at the time she just said, no, I don't think that's a really good idea right now. If you want to go to a church when you're a little older and you can understand it better, then you can. But I that is not something we do right now.
Okay.
So as far as something that really shaped me, though, I think it was probably in 9th grade or 10th grade or something when we were reading about King Henry VIII and how he proclaimed himself head of the Church of England because he couldn't get a divorce from his wife because the Pope wouldn't give it.
Yeah.
And at that point, I thought, well, if some guy can just decide he doesn't like...
That's how churches are created.
Well, no, but if he can just decide because he doesn't like how the rules are, that he's now going to make his own religion and create his own church, basically, and become the head of the church, all of this is just a man-made creation anyway. Mm-hmm. And that was a really startling thing for me. That was what made me think, all organized religion is probably
And is this a conclusion you came to on your own from that history class?
Yep.
Well, it's good to teach history. All of history. Not just the parts that make us feel good about our history, but the parts that make us feel bad about our history too. Also well worth teaching to the youngsters. Mm-hmm. Although you might end up with someone like her, an agnostic, because you're not an atheist, right? You still have your whole, I don't know, there's energy.
Yeah, I don't think there's a guy on a throne somewhere, but I do think that we are made of energy. We are beings of energy. Mm-hmm. And if that energy can somehow, go somewhere, it's got to go somewhere, because energy is neither created or destroyed. It just changes its form. Mm-hmm. So that's the best I can do.
All right.
That makes sense to me.
I don't have a lightning moment like Jen did. I also grew up in a secular household where I am sure my dad was completely atheistic, although it was just simply never discussed ever, one way or the other. Although I'll tell you right now, every year, one of the highlights of my year, because this was back growing up in the 70s, when all we had were 3 network stations and a couple of local UHF stations. One of my favorite things every year was when Jesus Christ Superstar came on, because the whole family got together and we all watched it every year, year after year. And I could still sing the lyrics for every single song in that, and I absolutely love it. But that was it. That was our Sunday school. It was Jesus Christ Superstar.
I know we've watched the Lloyd Andrew Webber show about casting.
Yeah.
for his most recent production of that. But I don't actually know what the story's about.
It's about the final days of Jesus, and it does a lot to kind of humanize the proceedings, cast Judas in a sympathetic light. Does not ignore the potential of the supernatural, but kind of does. Basically, okay, I'm not going to start singing Jesus Christ Superstar lyrics now, although I could. But yeah, it's a more down-to-earth humanist telling of the resurrection story, set to really amazing rock music. But anyway, yeah, so we watched that, and I think I mostly loved it just because the rock music was amazing. And my dad just loved King Herod's song. And he loved it when Ryan and I would sing it to him. Oh, so you are the Christ, you're the great Jesus Christ. Prove to me that you're divine. Turn my water into wine. If you can do, if it's all true, then, come on, you can. Yeah. I'm not saying that formed maybe it did. Heck, because I was certainly that was my indoctrination into Christianity, and that pretty much probably formed my views of it, about, Jesus was just an ordinary guy who, had a really good gospel. And he had this whole thing about he's the son of God and all of that. And, maybe that's a little, because that was Judas' whole thing is you really got to quit it with the son of God thing, because you're really pissing people off, and that's really going to cause problems for us. And are you even sure that's who you are? I mean, who do you think you are, man? Come on. And it's like, oh, Judas, don't worry, it's all going to be fine. Don't worry, be happy. Is pretty much Jesus throughout the movie, and until the end. But so there's that. But all I can remember is, back in the 70s, kids walked themselves to school and home every day.
Yeah.
And I had to walk a half a mile to school and back. And every day I walked by a church, which I had been to a couple of times for certain events. I don't even know why I was there. I'm sure because family had invited us or something like that. But I remember one day walking home and saying, I don't know, man. I'm just thinking to myself, God, if you're there, give me a sign. Just give me something. Anything. It doesn't have to be anything. Just make that leaf fall. Something right there. Just do it. Nope. Okay. Then it's crap. It's make believe. And I must have been like 7 or 8 years old when I had that little self conversation as I walked by the church that I walked by every single or 5 days a week, twice, to go to school. But yeah, I think Jen's got a better story than me. But Jesus Christ Superstar is fantastic. Okay. As an aside from atheistic thought, what are your thoughts on Buddhism and Taoism? If you're interested, there's a couple of books by Benjamin Hoff, The Tao of Pooh and The Tay of Piglet, that allegorically attempts to explain Taoism through the eyes of Winnie the Pooh and friends. I'll let Jen weigh in on that because I'm sure you heard a lot about Buddhism from your mother, who discovered Buddhism late in life.
Well, before we get off on God entirely, this sums it up for me.
Okay.
Do you want to read it?
Either God can do nothing to stop catastrophes, or he doesn't care, or he doesn't care to, or he doesn't exist. So God is either impotent, evil, or imaginary. Take your pick and choose wisely. Yeah. No, there's the fourth thing. He's mysterious. And we can't understand his ways because we're simple mortals. You forgot about that fourth one. He's mysterious. Anyway, though. So what are your thoughts on Buddhism and Taoism, Honey Pie?
I actually don't really know anything about Taoism.
Okay.
But my mom did do a pretty deep dive into Buddhism. And from what she could tell me, if I had to be religious, Buddhism would be the one I would choose to. Taoism is the way leading one to fulfill their immortality by becoming one with the universe, by living in balance. Buddhism is a philosophy where one strives to achieve enlightenment or nirvana through its teachings.
Buddhists follow Buddha's teaching and believe in God. Taoists follow the Tao and don't believe in God. All right, well, I'm pro-Tao, I guess.
I guess me too.
Yep.
But Buddha's teachings were pretty good ones. They were things like, yes, there will be suffering. Basically, get over it and get on with your life. Just expect it and do the best you can. Things like that. I mean...
So you appreciated that?
Yeah. Seems good.
And it certainly gave her a lot of comfort.
Yeah, a lot of comfort.
And hey, you know what? I do not begrudge anybody who gets comfort from religion. If you need it and if it helps you get through life and makes you a better person, great.
Yep, and if you're not shoving it down everybody else's throat.
Yeah. Anyway, though. So, it's time for another this, that, or the other. Honey Pie, actor. Ignoring their stances as politicians, directors, or activists. Just based solely on their acting chops. Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, or Kevin Costner. You have no response to that at all?
I'm going to go with Kevin Costner.
I would say of the three, Kevin Costner is probably the best actor. Harrison Ford just plays Harrison Ford. And Clint Eastwood, for the most part, just plays Clint Eastwood. I think Kevin Costner is a better actor. Putting aside his terrible British accent in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Although, actually, I would say he's not the most dynamic. I mean, Harrison Ford, I would certainly say, is the most charismatic of the three in terms of acting. Although Clint, The Unforgiven and, some of his later stuff is really amazing. But that's a tough one. You picked a good three to throw up against each other.
I've seen Clint Eastwood in just only a couple things, so I cannot really judge.
Yeah. I'm going to say of the three, Clint Eastwood is the weakest actor, although he is a very magnetic presence. Harrison Ford is the most charismatic, and honestly, really, the more I think about it, Kevin Costner's kind of blah. He's kind of vanilla. And he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him at all. But there's nothing to oh, wow. I'm just trying to think of all the performances I've seen. And I've seen so many, like, none of them are like, oh my God, wow. So no, I'm going to give it to Harrison Ford for raw, unvarnished charisma.
Okay.
And you got to give it to one of them.
I'm going Kevin.
Kevin Costner. All right. Band, Beatles, the Rolling Stones, or Led Zeppelin?
Beatles.
Beatles, easy peasy. Stones, number 2, and Zeppelin, number 3 for me. But only because... at the height of the Zepp's powers, I was listening to country and western music. I've heard very little of Led Zeppelin, in all honesty.
I had some because my sister liked them.
Yep.
But
movie series: The Pirates of the Caribbean, Lord of the Rings, or The Matrix.
Oh.
Now here's the deal: Pirates of the Caribbean is one amazing movie, and then a whole bunch of
follow-ups.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings.
People would say the same thing about The Matrix as well, but I would disagree. The Matrix is one amazing movie, and then 2 very good follow-ups. I think Matrix 2 and 3 are great, and I very much enjoy them.
Okay.
Yeah, they have less kung fu, but I was just as engaged by the dance of words, where everybody just philosophizes for 5 minutes instead of having a 5-minute fight scene. So, yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, I like Keanu, so I'm afraid Keanu is...
Over Lord of the Rings, you're taking Matrix?
No, I'm just saying. The Matrix is up there for me just because.
All right, it's a consideration, but keep going.
But no, it's obviously Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think I would take the Matrix over Lord of the Rings and Pirates of the Caribbean at the bottom, because really, Pirates of the Caribbean is one amazing movie, one okay movie, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. Whereas Matrix is one amazing movie, 2 great movies. Lord of the Rings is one amazing movie and 2 movies that could be amazing if they would cut 20 minutes of just endless clashing armies against each other.
Lord of the Rings has the bonus of The Hobbit. So.
All right.
It definitely.
So
wins.
Lord of the Rings, Matrix for me. Composer: Bach, Beethoven, or Mozart? I don't even know. I mean, I'm sure I'd have to. I don't know.
I actually like Handel.
Handel?
Yeah.
Oh, I do love water music. Water music is probably my favorite classical piece. When I was a preteen, I programmed an algorithm that would automatically play water music, which was very cool. I mean, I didn't program it. I copied it out of Compute magazine back in the 80s. So I'll say Handel as well. Righty. Help design a game with, you can't say, would you like to work with Alexander Pfister, Stefan Feld, or Wolfgang Kramer to design a game?
Well, if I got with Stefan Feld, I could dissuade him against the iconography on all his stuff.
That was not his choice, I am sure, but you could still put in. Yeah, Jen was not a fan of all the icons in. But remember, they sold the extra cards that have it in English.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't have to pay attention to the icons. But anyway, actually, I think I would surprise people and say Alexander Pfister, because while I like Stefan Feld more as a designer, I appreciate that Alexander Pfister values putting narrative into his Euros more than any other designer working today. So that would be an easy choice for me. And now finally, Honey Pie, the cutest animal: koalas, penguins, or sea otters? Do you need pictures to help you choose? You can visualize all 3 of these animals.
I do have to think about it because
I think it's a very easy answer.
It's got to be sea otters.
Yeah. You know why? You can't see, but Jen and I are lying next to each other and wrapping our little paws together to stay close together in the water.
That's adorable. Plus, they eat on their tummies. They have their babies on their tummies. They're so cute.
Yep. Alrighty, sea otters for the win. And then finally, Henrik says, hey, there were no words of wisdom in episode 95. So can we get 2 in episode 96? You're in luck, Henrik. Here we go. Go for it, honey pie. Both quotes from Matt Haig.
Yep. The sky isn't more beautiful if you have perfect skin. Music doesn't sound more interesting if you have a six-pack. That would be your abs.
Yes.
Dogs aren't better company if you're famous. Pizza tastes good regardless of your status. The best of life exists beyond the things we are encouraged to crave.
That's a good one.
And that is an anti-corporation message from Jen and Duck.
There you go. And then the second one.
Okay. I used to worry about fitting in until I realized the reason I didn't fit in was because I didn't want to.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, Henrik is right. There wasn't one in 95. I don't believe there was one in 94 either, because we were on the road and I think we just kind of forgot.
Oh, dear.
Because it used to be Henrik would write in every month to remind us.
Yes.
And at one point, Henrik said, hey, you know what? I'm really getting kind of tired of having to do the writing in to remind you. So can I just stop doing my work but you still do all of your work? And then what do you know? 6 months
totally
later,
forgot.
well, other people slack off too. So will there be words of wisdom next month? I don't know.
I got a bunch of Matt Haig quotes.
All right. She does. She has a ton of them. Who is Matt Haig?
Just a guy who's done some thinking.
I assume he's a writer?
Yeah, a writer. He has a book called The Comfort Book, and I got most of these quotes out of that.
Okay.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. And those were literally, you wrote those quotes down as you were reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just really enjoy pithy summaries.
Okay. Well, folks, here's what you've all been waiting for. Dog pictures.
Dogs!
Alrighty. Jeffrey says, Betsy and Kaiser pics attached. We adore both of them. And so I'd like to give a shout out to Gateway Pet Guardians in East St. Louis, who were instrumental in finding them their forever home with us.
Yay, you!
Betsy and Kaiser. Oh, with the pity with the one Groucho Marx eyebrow. I remember, yes.
Awesome. I love pit bulls.
My apologies for folks who are listening. Imagine really cute, adorable, snoozy pit bulls in all kinds of crazy contortions lying around the house, proving how they are just awesome dogs and not cold-blooded killers as you're led to believe.
Do you see? She's looking at us.
Yep. Yeah, giving us a side eye.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, there you go.
Love it, love it, love it.
Good stuff. Okay, and then Matt, I have some updated pictures of Doro. Doro was the beagle, remember? Matt, he asked for advice and all that about beagles and stuff.
What a beautiful
Doro
beagle.
is just growing in front of us.
Yeah.
She is stunningly gorgeous, that beagle.
She's a teenager now.
Yep.
Look at her, a big gangly teenager.
Yep.
Cute, cute.
All right, folks, that is it. We are done with the personal section now after 1 hour and 40 minutes. Thank you, as always, for making it with us this far. And more questions, you know where to send them. And if you don't want to talk about sports anymore, that's fine. I won't mind. But regardless, whatever is on your mind, let us know. Questions@rahdo.com. And otherwise, thank you very much for watching or listening. And have a very nice day. Talk to you later. So long.
Bye-bye.
Bye.